At the age of 60, Su Mu is old and frail, with half of his body buried in the ground and still spinning in the early stages of qi cultivation. On the path of cultivating immortality, he was at the end of his life, bowing his head to life and preparing to marry and have children. I don't want it to be on the day my daughter is born, with double happiness at the door and the path of cultivation reopened for him. Congratulations on achieving success. A daughter of joy. Happy daughter. Increase 10 points of Qi luck every day. Qi Yun value. Can be used to improve skill proficiency, cannot directly increase cultivation. In order to live a better life, to reach the pinnacle and live a long life, Su Mu began the path of getting married, having children, and achieving success. Current achievements. Blessing of all, hiding beauty in a golden house, having 2 daughters at home, stealing jade and stealing incense, having a noble son, having both children. Keywords of the novel. Changxing starts from an old woman with no pop-ups. Changxing starts from an old woman with no pop-ups. Download the complete text, and read the latest chapters from an old woman. Chapter 1. Moving. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Moving. Qinghe Sword Sect, Beifang City, Muqiao Street. The sky is gloomy, with a faint drizzle falling. On the muddy street, a group of low-level Qi practitioners wearing outdated Taoist robes are stretching their heads and shrinking their heads to watch the excitement. Su Mu, why haven't you moved yet? Do you insist on me taking action? Following several subordinates behind him, Steward Lu, with a sinister gaze, stared at a middle-aged man with slightly graying hair in the yard and said coldly. Steward Lu, do you think it's possible to extend the grace period for a while? My wife is about to give birth. Su Mu said with a smile. Your wife is giving birth and meddling in our affairs, she's not our kind. A short and chubby man behind Manager Lu, with his triangular eyes tilted, joked. The other few people burst out laughing loudly. Su Mu's blood instantly surged onto his face. He clenched his fists slightly and almost rushed forward to fight against the opponent. Please help me, the steward. When I have the spirit stone, I will definitely make up for all the differences. After a moment of anger, Su Mu took a deep breath and calmed down. His fists relaxed gently, and his tone changed to calm. He can die on his own. But he died. What should a wife who is about to give birth do? At his age, having a family and family, even death is a luxury. Help. How can I help? Everyone is like you, should I still be the steward? If there is no spirit stone, get out of here immediately. If I still see you in an hour, don't blame me for being impolite. Steward Lu snorted coldly, shook his sleeve, and turned around with his people to leave. Su Mu's teeth were shattered, but he dared not even say a harsh word. As for what 30 years of Hedong and 30 years of Heshi? Let's save it. He is already in his 60s this year, and in 30 years, the grass on his grave will probably be 3 feet tall. Su Mu returned to the house dejectedly and began to tidy up his things. My wife Yi Yingying walked out of the bedroom with a big belly. Her fair and pretty face was filled with guilt. It's all my fault. If it weren't for my recent exposure to wind evil and spending all my savings, our family wouldn't have been unable to pay rent. Su Mu smiled bitterly and shook his head. It's nothing to do with you. The rent is rising 3 times a day now. Even if we can make it through this time, next time, we'll be kicked out sooner or later. Recently, there has been a war between the Qinghe Sword Sect and the Soul Refining Demon Sect. In order to collect war resources, the family responsible for managing the market is constantly squeezing the people below. I remember when he first moved to Muqiao Lane, his monthly rent was only 2 low-quality spirit stones, but now it has increased to 10 yuan, which is 5 times more. It is very likely that the price will rise again this month. Although he is an alchemist, his income is not high, and he only earns more than 10 lower-grade spirit stones per month. Excluding living expenses and personal cultivation expenses, the remaining spiritual stones cannot afford the high rent. Recently, almost all of it has been barely maintained through previous savings. As for Yi Yingying's previous illness, it can only be considered as adding insult to injury, bringing forward her departure time by a few months. After comforting his wife, Su Mu continued to pack up, but couldn't help but laugh at himself. I didn't expect that as a grand passerby, I could barely afford to take care of my wife. I'm probably the most useless one among all the passersby. That's right. Su Mu is not from this world. His soul is a 20th century college student. Just because I invited the goddess to the hotel, I was too excited when I was doing things. I accidentally crossed into this mysterious world of cultivation and became possessed by a middle-aged old cultivator. He originally wanted to struggle a bit, but his fate was up to him. But soon he was pressed down on the ground by reality and rubbed fiercely. Everyone can practice in this world, but there is a huge difference in talent between cultivators. Su Mu is the type of person with the lowest talent, belonging to 99% of the people in this world. So much so that I only practiced the third layer of qi at the age of over 60. If he was born in a secular world full of turbid qi, he may never develop a sense of qi after practicing for a lifetime. But he would rather travel to the secular world. Perhaps with the knowledge of past lives, one can still make a personal appearance. Unlike now, being a cultivator is not as good as a dog. Feeling of his mediocre qualifications, Su Mu simply put aside his lifelong thoughts and, through the introduction of a matchmaker, met Yi Yingying, whose father had just passed away and was equally mediocre in talent and lonely. The two of them became married and prepared to live a simple life, have children, and cultivate offspring. If they could take care of themselves, they would be grateful. I just didn't expect that the house leek would encounter continuous rain and gloom. Shortly after getting married, I was caught in a big battle between the Qinghe sword sect and the soul-refining demon sect, to the point where I couldn't even sustain my life. Speaking of which, Yi Yingying has not had a good day since she followed him. Thinking of Su Mu feels ashamed in his heart. The two of them packed their things, and Su Mu helped Yi Yingying out of the yard. Master Su Dan, remember to come back often when you have time. There's nothing I can give you, just give you some newly bought fruits and let your wife eat more. Take care, maybe we'll go over and be with you in a while. Some familiar neighbors came out to bid them farewell. Su Mu politely reciprocated one by one. Ah. I don't know when this fight will end. Watching Su Mu's figure constantly receding in the drizzle, everyone couldn't help but feel a sense of regret for his death. Muqiao Lane itself is already located on the outskirts of Beishifeng City. If you can't even afford to live here, you can only go to the shantytowns on the outskirts. There is sewage flowing horizontally, a foul smell everywhere, and it is said that there are also evil spirits at work, often causing people to die inexplicably. Su Mu is not good at fighting, and he is also taking his wife who is about to give birth. This farewell may not have a chance to see him again. Everyone couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. Beishifeng City shantytown on the dilapidated streets, the newly drizzling air is filled with the fragrance of soil and a faint foul smell. Su Mu propped up an oil paper umbrella, supported Yi Yingying, and followed a blue-clothed man of the Zhangtu rat order, walking deep and shallow into the alley. That's it. A spirit stone lasts for a month, so if you're willing, just sign it. The man pinched his nose and pointed to a dilapidated house next to him, saying. He is a resident in a shantytown responsible for renting a house. Su Mu asked Yi Yingying to wait outside the door and walked in step by himself. There are a total of 4 rooms inside the room, 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, 1 living room, and 1 miscellaneous room. The walls of the house are all made of bluestone, which looks quite sturdy and should be able to withstand 2 spell attacks. The roof is made of poplar wood and mud tiles, the corners are covered with thick spider webs, and the furniture in the room is only a wooden bed with a thick layer of dust on it. The air is filled with a smell of decay and mold, and no one should have lived there for a long time. But after Sumu saw it, he could only grit his teeth and nod. He has already looked at several nearby places, and they are basically the same. At least the location here is quite good. After signing the contract and handing over the spirit stone, this became the new residence for the couple. Seeing how much fun it is for you to exchange spirit stones, I would like to remind you one last thing. Try not to go out at night as much as possible. I don't want to come next time to help you two collect corpses. After speaking, Yaren turned around and walked along the corner of the wall, leaving quickly as if unwilling to stay here for even a second. The words of the Yaren made Sumu's heart inexplicably uneasy, but he had no other choice but to live here. After a simple cleaning, Sumu asked Yi Yingying to stay in the room while he brought some small gifts and visited the nearby neighbors one by one. Mainly to inquire about the situation here and avoid any taboos. As expected, all the people living nearby were poor cultivators like him, but there were also some seemingly powerful assassins. For example, one of the twin brothers had a pale face, cold eyes, and a strong smell of blood on their bodies. When Sumu knocked on the door to visit, the two of them only opened the door a crack, gave him a cold glance, and then closed the door. And at this glance, Sumu's scalp tingled and he was covered in cold. These two are likely cultivators who make a living through combat. In the future, it's better not to provoke them as much as possible, Sumu reminded himself secretly. However, there are also some talkative people among them, such as a young couple living next door to him, and an old Dan teacher living at the entrance of the alley. After visiting and returning home, Sumu and Yi Yingying talked about the situation in the alley and asked her to lie down and rest. I left the bedroom and went to the cleaned miscellaneous room, ready to start refining pills. He is an alchemist, and all his livelihood comes from pills. Alchemists can be said to be the most profitable and also the most money-burning among all professions. Although Sumu has passed the initial stage of burning money, he is still 108,000 miles away from making big money. There are only two types of pills that he can refine now, one is Pigu Dan and the other is Juki Dan. Pigu Dan is the most common type of pill, and its effect is that taking one pill can prevent hunger for 3 days. Of course, it varies from person to person. Like Sumu, a grain of Pigu Dan can last up to 1 day at most. When practitioners go hunting or practice in seclusion, they usually prepare some for convenience. If you are a relatively wealthy cultivator, you will consider the Pigu Dan as a regular food. Although cultivators can eat ordinary food, there is often a heavy amount of turbid energy in ordinary food. If consumed for a long time, it will stay in the body and seriously affect cultivation. Juki Dan is a type of pill that assists in cultivation. After taking it, it can quickly increase the speed at which the practitioner's spiritual energy condenses. Although Juki Dan is much more expensive than Pigu Dan, it is very popular among cultivators because it can assist in cultivation. Sumu is currently refining the Pigu Dan. As for the Juki Dan, although he can refine it, the high failure rate is terrifying and it is currently in the stage of burning money. He first took out the medicinal herbs from the storage bag, carefully inspected them, and then took out the most precious alchemy furnace from all his belongings. The Dan stove is about 3 feet high, with 3 legs and 2 ears. The overall color is bronze, narrow on the top and wide on the bottom, like a small fat person. The stove body is engraved with many mysterious runes, like tadpoles. When he couldn't afford the rent, he once had a thought and wanted to sell the furnace. However, ultimately reason triumphed over impulse. Because that's like drinking poison to quench thirst. He only cultivates 3 layers of chi and is not good at combat. If he loses the source of life of alchemy, he will only have a dead end. After arranging the alchemy furnace, Sumu took out a few green spirit trees resembling jade from the storage bag and placed them under the alchemy furnace. Pinching a magic technique with both hands, the spiritual power inside surged, poop. A fist-sized orange fireball appeared in front of him. Go! Su Mufa's formula changed, and the fireball landed on the spiritual wood, quickly igniting it. Then he crossed his fingers and quickly kneaded a few spells, casting new ones. Boom! The flames on the spiritual wood surged fiercely, transforming into several live fire snakes, wrapping the alchemy furnace and preheating both inside and outside the furnace simultaneously. The spell he uses to control flames is called the fire control technique, which is a first-order fire magic that all alchemists must practice. The strength of the fire control technique has a significant impact on the success of elixirs. Su Mu has been practicing for many years and has already mastered the fire control technique to a proficient level. It is estimated that he will be able to complete it in a few more years. As for the later masters, grandmasters, and even extraordinary realms, it is not something that can be achieved through simple cultivation. The technique of controlling fire is not only a means for Su Mu to refine pills, but also his strongest combat technique now. After being used, it can control flames, form fire snakes and birds, and launch attacks on enemies. As for the attack tools used by most cultivators, Su Mu used to have them, but recently he sold them to help Yi Yingying see a doctor. After the preheating of the Dan furnace was completed, Su Mu began to pour medicinal herbs into it one by one, while stimulating the formation runes on the Dan furnace to perceive and control the changes in the medicinal herbs inside. After the medicinal herbs were completely melted, he began to use the fire control technique to increase the flame temperature. Although Pigu Dan is the most common pill in the cultivation world, it is still very cumbersome and troublesome to refine. However, it is precisely because of the trouble that alchemists are extremely rare and profitable. The busy refining process lasted all night. Sensing the medicinal properties of the medicinal herbs in the elixir, Su Mu began to settle and contract steadily. His hands were as fast as a phantom, and he quickly kneaded the formula for collecting the elixir. Bang! The stove lid was opened, and the fragrance of medicine filled the air. Round and yellow pills flew out of it and landed in his palm. Unfortunately, all of them are of inferior quality. Su Mu checked and a hint of disappointment appeared on his face. He no longer knows how many times he has refined the Pigu Dan, and the probability of failure is not high, but the quality has not been able to improve. Alchemists classify the same type of elixir into inferior, intermediate, superior, and top grade according to its quality, with inferior being the worst and top grade being the best. In general, only 15 lower grade Pigu pills can be exchanged for one lower grade spirit stone. A medium grade requires 12 or 13 pills, while a top grade only requires 10 pills. As for the top grade, 5 pills are enough. The top quality Pigu Dan is not only expensive, but also has huge profits and is very easy to sell. Practitioners take the Pigu pill to supplement their body's consumption and to avoid residual turbid qi in their body. Lower grade, middle grade, and top grade all have turbid air inside, it's just a matter of how much, only the top grade won't have it, and can be consumed in large quantities for a long time. I can't believe it's top quality. If I could refine a little bit of it, I would be satisfied. Su Mugong was about to meditate and restore his spiritual power when his wife's screams suddenly came from the bedroom. New book release, seeking support. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Infant Blood Pill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Infant Blood Pill, What's Going On? Su Mu quickly got up and rushed into the bedroom. Yi Yingying pointed to a corner of the roof, her face pale and trembling. Su Mu held it in his arms, followed his fingers, and looked up. At the next moment, the pupils trembled slightly. A moldy broken hand is stuck in the corner of the roof. Fortunately, there was no movement in that hand. Who? Taking a deep breath and calming down, Su Mu found a wooden stick and stabbed it down. Broken hands were covered in dark green mold, withered like old cured meat, and it was difficult to distinguish whether it was a man or a woman. Su Mu endured nausea and found a piece of cloth to wrap it around. Go out. Throw it into the sewer at the entrance of the alley. Yi Yingying was sheltered by his father since childhood, with a simple mind and little insight. He stumbled upon this kind of thing and was scared out of his wits for a while. Su Mu calmed him down for a while before finally recovering. Xianggong, am I too useless? Yi Yingying huddled in her arms, her eyes slightly red as she looked at Su Mu. Su Mu rubbed her little head and said with a smile, you just don't see much, you'll get used to it in the future. This is not the peaceful and prosperous era of the past life. It is the world of cultivating immortals where the law of the fittest prevails and human life is like grass. Even if Su Mu feels sorry for his wife, he can only make her stronger bit by bit. However, she is only in her 20s and 80s. It's very good for her to behave like this. At least, she never complained about the hardships of life, nor did she blame Su Mu for his incompetence. Although it was just an ordinary-looking broken hand, it still cast a shadow over Su Mu's heart. Just in case, Su Mu bought a talisman to ward off evil in the local market and had Yi Yingying keep it close to him. The already pitiful savings are even more stretched out. Fortunately, as long as he can still refine pills, he can gradually accumulate them. In the following days, apart from taking care of his wife's daily life, Su Mu spent most of his time refining the Pai Gu Dan. After accumulating a certain amount of pills, they are taken to the shops in the local market for sale. He has been an alchemist for so many years and has a fixed cooperative shop, so there is no need to worry about sales. It's just that the price of the store is much lower than when I used to set up my own stall. However, Yi Yingying is about to give birth and he dare not leave for too long. To avoid accidents, he can only sell at a low price. In addition to refining pills, Su Mu also squeezed out some time to practice the technique of controlling fire. Whether it's the reminders from the dentist, the moldy broken hand, or those strange neighbors, they all make him feel deeply insecure. In order to cope with possible accidents, he must seize every opportunity to improve his strength as much as possible. Even if it's just a tiny bit. In the room, a palm-sized orange flame bird flew out of Su Mu's hand and collided with rocks on the ground. Bang! There was a clear sound coming from the impact point between the bird and the stone, as if someone was holding a hammer and smashing it hard. The stone shook slightly, leaving a black shallow pit with burning marks, while the flying bird scattered into strands of sparks after impact, flying into the air and converging again. Unfortunately, it's still a bit inferior to Fireball. Su Mu said with some regret. Fire control is not purely a combat spell. Although he has reached a proficiency level, the power of spells such as Fireball and Wind Blade is still much inferior. However, the true advantage of the fire control technique is not its attack power, but its ability to sustain battles and its flexibility and versatility. Such as the flying bird in the air, under the control of Su Mu, suddenly transformed into a fiery snake, winding around dozens of pounds of stones and slowly lifting them from the ground. Perhaps because the stone slab was too heavy, after being raised to 1/2 meter high, the fire snake exploded with a bang and scattered into a sky full of sparks. The stone also fell with a loud thud and hit the ground fiercely. Mars once again converged, this time neither transforming into a flying bird nor a fire snake, but into a fireball. The fireball kept rotating and compressing, gradually turning from orange-red to blood-red, and finally dark red. It landed on the stone and exploded with a loud bang, instantly shattering the slate. Su Mu took a deep breath and a smile appeared on his face. This is his ultimate move developed based on his knowledge of physics from a previous life, which forms a powerful explosive force through flame compression. More powerful than Fireball. The only downside is that compression takes time and the flame needs to be released again after use. Su Mu rested for a while, regained some spiritual power, and with a snap of his right hand, a flame ignited at his fingertips. This is an ignition technique that doesn't even count as a first-order spell. Almost all cultivators know it. As long as they inject spiritual power, they can infinitely magnify the flames. It is perfectly suitable to be used in conjunction with the execution of the fire control technique. The flames converged in the air, transforming into a new fire snake and flying towards the stones. These days passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, half a month had passed, and Yi Yingying's production day was getting closer and closer. Evening after eating, Yi Yingying felt a bit unwell, so Su Mu asked her to go back to her room and rest first, while she was responsible for tidying up the dishes. Looking at the bottom of the bowl that was eaten by Yi Yingying, Su Mu couldn't help but feel another pain in his heart. Recently, I have accumulated some spiritual stones. Let's go to the local market tomorrow to buy some spiritual rice for Yingying to supplement. Also, I need to prepare some food for postpartum confinement. Su Mu frowned, calculating in his heart how to use the limited spiritual stone to its fullest potential. Just thinking it over and over, I'm still struggling. The cheapest spiritual rice in the local market can only be bought in 5 pounds for a piece of inferior spiritual stone, and meat with spiritual energy is even more expensive. Usually, a piece of inferior spiritual food can only be bought in 2 or 3 pounds. Recently, due to the war, prices have been continuously increasing. Sigh. What a pitiful couple. Just as Su Mu was busy and preparing to return to his room to take care of his wife, there was suddenly a hurried knocking on the door outside. Who would it be so late? Su Mu cautiously took out a few talismans, held them in his palm, and walked towards the main entrance. Although no abnormalities were found nearby during this period, he had already heard of various terrifying rumors about the shantytown and dared not take them lightly. Who is outside? Su Mu shouted out. Su Daoyu, it's me. An old voice came in from outside. Su Mu frowned slightly, judging from his voice that he was the old Dan teacher living at the entrance of the alley. Lao Dan Shi's name is Sun Daoqing, and he is already in his 80s. Recently, he has been frequently visiting the door to chat with Su Mu under the guise of exploring Dan Dao. Su Mu is not easy to refuse when he first arrives, and he also wants to learn about the surrounding situation from the other party, so he will be invited in every time. However, the other party usually comes during the day and at night, which is still their first time. Su Mu looked through the crack in the door and confirmed that only Sun Daoqing had opened the door, but he did not let him in. Outside the door, Sun Daoqing was wearing a greasy robe, covered in black and gray, with bloodshot eyes and a lot of eye droppings at the corners, as if he hadn't rested for a few days. Sun Daoyu, are you here so late for anything? Looking at Sun Daoqing, who was even more disheveled than before, Su Mu asked in confusion. There's really something going on. On Sun Daoqing's wrinkled old face, a chrysanthemum-like smile squeezed out. He first looked inside for a moment before whispering, Su Daoyu, I don't know how long until my younger siblings give birth. Su Mu squinted his eyes, showing a guarded expression. Sun Daoyu, why are you asking this? He. Sun Daoqing smiled and rubbed his hands, his eyes slightly fanatical. I have the method for refining the infant blood pill in my hand, if you are willing. Get lost. Su Mu's face turned pale in an instant, and his eyes were as cold as ice. He had heard the young couple next door say that this old man was not a good person, he just didn't know at first, so he had some interaction with him. I never expected that he would have such an idea. I'm afraid the enthusiasm shown in the past few days is not directed towards him, but towards the child in his wife's belly. Don't get angry yet. This way, I'll take out the other medicinal herbs, and we'll split in half. Before Sun Daoqing could finish speaking, Su Mu slammed the door shut. Hey! Su Daoyu, don't worry. If it doesn't work, we can still discuss it. Otherwise, how about you 6 and I 4? If it doesn't work, we can do 3 or 7. Sun Daoqing outside the door shouted a few more unwillingly. And Su Mu had already returned to his bedroom with a gloomy expression on his face. Seeing Su Mu's delayed response, Sun Daoqing couldn't help but feel a bit frustrated. I'm almost unable to support myself anymore, and I'm still raising children. I think I have a mental illness. The reason why he has been running to Su Mu's house these days is to inquire about their situation. It was precisely because he understood that their family's life was difficult that he dared to say such words. However, he did not expect Su Mu's mind to be so dim that he would refuse his kindness. Raising a child is a loss-making business. When a woman grows up and wants to get married, you have to support her in her cultivation. If you hand it over to me, she can immediately earn a large amount of spiritual stones. When it comes to time, whether it's going to the gambling house or the gang, she can be as happy as she wants. What an idiot. Sun Daoqing shook his sleeves, turned around and left, cursing, and walked towards his home at the entrance of the alley. Just halfway through, the door on the side suddenly creaked and opened from inside. A strong bloody smell immediately permeated. Sun Daoyu, since he is unwilling, why not cooperate with the three of us? Behind the door were a pair of twin brothers with a cold smile on their lips and a pale face like paper. This. Looking at the two of them, Sun Daoqing looked somewhat apprehensive. He has lived in this alley for many years and is not unfamiliar with these two people. He knows that one of them is named Li Wen, and the other is named Li Wu. In private, they are robbers who specialize in buying and selling without a capital. It is said that the cultivation techniques are also very strange, requiring occasional blood-sucking. However, he himself is not a good person to be bullied by others. Although he is afraid of the two, he is not too afraid. Feeling his empty pocket and considering the large debt owed by the gambling house, Sun Daoqing finally gritted his teeth and walked in. There are some things in the shantytown, but it's okay if you don't agree. If you have any opinions, be sure to raise them. Thank you all. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Lao Lai Maiden. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Lao Lai Maiden. Xianggong, what did you say outside just now? Yi Yingying couldn't help but ask when she saw Su Mu's face not looking good after he came in. It's okay. He wanted me to help refine pills, so I pushed him. Su Mu's eyebrows relaxed and he comforted with a smile. You may be giving birth in the next few days, don't think so much, let's rest early. Oh. Yi Yingying nodded without asking much. She is young and has not seen much of the world. Basically, Su Mu says whatever he says and rarely refutes it. In Su Mu's eyes, she is simply like a child. Every time he communicates, it fills him with a deep sense of guilt. In fact, Su Mu initially wanted to find an older person to support each other, but the cultivation world is different from his previous life. Here, women become more popular as they get older, and his own conditions are very limited. In the end, he can only find a girl like Yi Yingying, who is helpless and inexperienced. Not long after lying down, Yi Yingying frowned elegantly, and a painful expression suddenly appeared on her pretty face. What's wrong? Su Mu immediately stood up nervously. I feel like, fast, almost giving birth. What? Even for 2 generations, Su Mu couldn't help but feel nervous at this moment. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and quickly took out various talismans and pills that he had already prepared. As for the midwife, he wanted to find one, but there was no one in Beifeng City. Fortunately, Yi Yingying herself is also a cultivator. Although she only practices a layer of qi, her vitality is still much stronger than that of ordinary people. After some effort from the two, a loud cry from a baby came out of the room. Looking at the crumpled and red baby in his arms, Su Mu took a deep breath and felt relieved. I can also be considered an old lady, right? I should say she's an old lady. He is over 60 years old this year, and in his past life, he is definitely an old tree blooming and can make headlines. However, in this world of cultivation, where the general lifespan exceeds 100 years, it is not too exaggerated. Like those great cultivators during the foundation building period and the great powers of the golden elixir period, they only have children at the age of a few hundred. Show me. After receiving treatment with therapeutic talismans and taking pills to replenish vitality, Yi Yingying's mental state had recovered significantly. She reached out to take the baby in Su Mu's arms, with a happy smile on her face. With a small face and apricot eyes, cherry red lips, and long black hair, Yi Yingying was truly beautiful in Su Mu's eyes at this moment. What should we name her? Yi Yingying looked up at Su Mu, who was stunned, and asked. Just call her Su Linghao. Su Mu reacted and smiled, saying the name he had already thought of. Su Linghem. It sounds great. In the future, I'll call you Lingling by my nickname. Yi Yingying gently teased the baby in her arms. And just as the two of them decided on their names, a strange electronic sound suddenly rang out in Su Mu's mind. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the first offspring. The family achievement system has met the activation conditions. Host gives birth to the first offspring, rewards 10,000 points of chi luck value, achievements achieved. Happy to receive a daughter. Happy daughter. You can earn 10 points of chi points every day. Chi yun value. Can be used to improve skill proficiency, cannot directly increase cultivation. Open the character attribute panel, name. Su Mu, life. 62/104, realm. Practice chi 3 layers, 328/400, practice. Mastery of Lingyan technique, 311/400, skill. Alchemy. Mastery of Pi Gudan, 241/400, beginner level gathering chi pill, 20/100 spell. Proficient in fire control techniques, 323/400, proficient in fireball skills, 129/200, proficient in wind blade technique, 108/200, proficient in light body techniques, 114-200 divine power. None, chi yun value. 10010, is this, golden finger. System. After experiencing a brief shock and astonishment, Su Mu's entire soul was immediately filled with uncontrollable ecstasy. After years of traveling, the system finally received the payment. Do you know how I've been living these years? Xianggong, what's wrong with you? Watching Su Mu tremble with excitement, Yi Yingying asked somewhat strangely. Although having a child is worth being happy about, there's no need to get excited like this. To be honest, after a brief moment of happiness, her heart was filled with thick sorrow. How should one live after worrying? Their lives are already very tight, and now they have added a small one. I'm afraid it will become increasingly difficult in the future. I'm so happy. I'm really so happy. Haha. Su Mu couldn't help but hug Yi Yingying twice. Yi Yingying's face turned peach red. Still holding the child in my arms. Don't worry, I won't let you suffer anymore. And this little guy is really my lucky star. Su Mu looked at his daughter's wrinkled face as if he were looking at a peerless treasure. Although I didn't know where Su Mu's confidence came from, Yi Yingying nodded heavily. Anyway, as long as it's what her husband says, she's willing to believe it. When Yi Yingying and the children were all asleep and it was already midnight, Su Mu had time to study the newly awakened system carefully. There's actually nothing to study, the introduction on the panel is very detailed and clear at a glance. The only unclear thing is, what are the achievements of the system? How to obtain it again? Since we have a daughter who is happy, shouldn't we still have a noble son who is happy? Or maybe we have both children. Since it is a family achievement system, everything related to the family should be considered achievements. For example, wives and concubines in groups, children and grandchildren in large families, having many children and grandchildren, and so on. This achievement feels very similar to the farming game I played in my past life. With each achievement completed, it's like adding a variety of fields, which can continuously produce food, which is also known as chi luck. Then enhance your strength through Qi luck and achieve more achievements. The more achievements you achieve, the more energy points you gain every day. The faster your strength improves. Su Mu became more and more excited as he watched. With this system, not to mention becoming the great cultivator of the foundation building period that he has long dreamed of, even the golden elixir and Yuanying ancestor may not have the opportunity. However, this Qi luck value cannot directly increase cultivation, which is somewhat regrettable. If one can directly improve their cultivation, their progress speed will definitely be much faster. However, this aura value seems more like a vague spiritual belief or other power, unable to enhance actual cultivation, and can be understood. Putting aside the idea of how to achieve success, Su Mu felt that he should first consider how to allocate his existing energy points to enhance his strength and improve his life. After all, no matter how beautiful the future is, we must first live through the present. 10,000 points of Qi luck value can probably elevate a skill to a master or even an extraordinary level. Even ordinary skills, if cultivated to an extraordinary level, will have incredible power. This is something that all cultivators know, but it is too difficult to cultivate to an extraordinary level. Even the simplest fireball technique, he had never heard of anyone reaching an extraordinary level. Of course, it is also possible that he is ignorant. After all, the world is big, and the place he is located in is very small. The ancestors of the Qinghe sword sect are only in the golden elixir period. These 10,000 points of Qi luck value are likely a beginner's gift package, and should not be used indiscriminately. Su Mu is very cautious about how to allocate these 10,000 points of luck. Because it is very likely that this is his biggest fortune in the short term. In the future, if you want to have so much luck, you won't know how long it will take. Su Mu's idea is to use it separately, in proportion to its weight, to enhance attack spells, alchemy, and major cultivation techniques. In his heart, safety always comes first. In this world, only by living can he consider making money, and with money, improving one's cultivation is just a matter of course. From the first day he traveled to this world, the strong sense of crisis in his heart never diminished. If it weren't for the pressure of life, he would definitely devote all his time to improving his strength. And that Sun Daoqing, I always feel like things won't end so easily. Just after improving his strength, kill him. Su Myuk has never been a good man and a faithful woman. In this world, good men and faithful women cannot survive. For the sake of my wife and daughter, there are some things that I have to do even if I don't want to. Su Mugen didn't need to think too much about the choice of aggressive spells. Fire control technique. Not only can it enhance his combat ability, but it can also enhance his alchemy ability, killing two birds with one stone. After confirmation, Su Mu began to add points. First, elevate to the state of perfection and see. Fire control technique plus 77, complete fire control technique, 0/800. It's over, everyone can invest. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Master of Fire Control. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Master of Fire Control Memory. As the addition was completed, Su Mu's mind immediately flooded with huge memories. Familiar yet unfamiliar. It's all about the various experiences of the fire control technique. These experiences are just like what he learned day after day, year after year, summarizing and learning, constantly improving, and constantly honing. Su Mu closed his eyes and restrained his mind. Continuously accept this vast memory. It's been a while. Who? Su Mu breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I didn't add it in one breath, otherwise I would have been fooled by memories. Su Mu felt fortunate in his heart. Although it only increased Qi luck by 77 points, according to Su Mu's original cultivation speed, it would take at least several years to reach it. Adding years of memory at once, just think about it and know what it feels like. However, this kind of improvement is really enjoyable. Pop. Su Mu snapped his right finger. Puff. A ray of orange-red flames sprouted from his nails. Su-mu extended his right hand forward and waved in the void, shouting. A large flame appeared before my eyes. Retract the right hand and bring the left and right hands together. 10 fingers flipped, and in an instant, they needed the counting technique. Shoo! The flames twisted and quickly transformed into a flapping firebird, like a phoenix reborn from the flames. The bird flapped its wings and flew high into the air, then took a dive and crashed towards the ground towards the stones. Just as it was about to collide, it suddenly stopped. Su-mu felt a cold sweat in his heart. My wife and daughter just fell asleep. If I come here for a moment, I won't wake them up. Babies are really hard to coax. He pinched the formula with his hands. The firebird instantly transformed into a fiery snake, winding the stone and slowly lifting it up from the ground. Fly all the way up to one person's height before showing signs of collapse. Su-mu quickly put it down. Compared to before, it's more than twice as easy. I'm afraid the impact force is the same. I just don't know what the power is after compression. Unfortunately, the house is too small for experimentation. If you really come up here, not only his wife and daughter need to wake up, but the whole alley could also be disturbed. However, try compressing it to the point where it's possible. When it's close to its limit, just scatter it. The fire snake quickly flew in front of him and, under the control of the spell, contracted into a small vortex ball, shrinking from the size of a face to the size of a fist. From orange-red, to blood-red, and then to dark red. The faint fluctuation in the center startled Su-mu and quickly dispersed. The explosive power of this compressed fireball may have reached the level of a second-order spell, with its power increasing exponentially, which is completely different from the increase in attack power and tension. Maybe, in the future, it will become a divine skill. Su-mu was thrilled in his heart. Just this compressed fireball, it's like a chemical reaction. In the later stages, he himself had a feeling of uncontrollability. My cultivation level is still too low. Because making compressed fireballs not only tests control, but also requires a strong mental state, otherwise it will lose control. This is the perfect level. If we elevate to the extraordinary level, wouldn't it be? Su-mu dare not think. Because if he doesn't do it well, he will also be killed by the explosion. Su-mu sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and began to recover his spiritual power and spirit. After the state is restored, open the system panel again and add chi luck to the fire control technique. However, he learned well this time, adding only 10 points at a time, absorbing all the experience, and then continuing to add. It took him half an hour to upgrade the fire control technique to a master level, with 800 points of chi luck. Su-mu rested for a while. With a snap of his right hand, he released flames. Just pinching a spell, the flames seemed to have become his extension. A thought twitched. Goo! Flames turn into flying birds, and feathers emerge. Hush! Flames turn into fiery snakes, and smooth snake body patterns can be seen. Next are tigers, elk, rabbits, eagles, and so on, which do not require any control at all. They can be presented through imagination alone. Su-mufa's secret has been changed, the flames covered the ground with tens of pounds of stones. I don't feel any pressure at all. Hoo. The stone turned into a fireball, flying back and forth in the room like a shooting star. This can be used directly to smash people. Su-mu's eyes sparkled with excitement. He didn't expect that the first-level magic of the fire control technique, the master realm of cultivation, would have such power. As for compressing fireballs, he didn't dare to try. Rest and recover. Continue to add points. From the master level to the master level of the fire control technique, it's a total of 1,600 points. Su-mu added 2 hours. I feel dizzy, exhausted. Unable to try again, as soon as my head touched the pillow, I fell asleep. When I wake up again, it's already the second afternoon. Wow, wow, wow. My daughter let out loud cries around me. Sumu looked around but couldn't see his wife. He stood up suddenly. Leaving the bedroom, I saw my wife busy in the kitchen. You just gave birth and can't get out of bed. Go back and sit down and rest. It's all my fault. I practiced for too long yesterday. Sumu felt heartbroken. I just said yesterday that I won't let my wife suffer, but today I will let my wife, who has just given birth, get out of bed and work. What a slap in the face. I feel pretty good. It's not that serious. On Yi Yingying's pale little face, a soft smile appeared. Be obedient. Sumu's face sank slightly. Oh. Yi Yingying lowered her head, very obedient. Like a child who did something wrong. Sumu smiled bitterly and couldn't bear to say anything more. I just don't want you to be affected, so what kind of illness is left behind? Aha. I understand what Xiangong means. Yi Yingying's face once again showed a smile. Simplicity, innocence. Sumu lovingly embraced it in his arms, affectionately embraced it, and carried it back. After eating, Yi Yingying takes care of the child. Sumu returned to the miscellaneous room and began experimenting with the power of the Grandmaster level fire control technique. Puff. Flames burst out between the fingers. There is no longer a need for magic spells, everything seems to have become an instinct. Sumu's 5 fingers moved slightly. The flames turned into a lifelike flying bird. You can even see the strands of fluff on top, drifting with the wind. The flying bird flapped its wings and flew high, circling around the roof before landing on Sumu's shoulder and gently pecking at his clothes. Full of spirituality, like living creatures. Haha. It's amazing. Sumu himself was shocked by his methods. It's unbelievable. If I follow my original cultivation speed, I guess I won't even reach this level until I die. Although the fire control technique is a first-order spell, the difficulty of later cultivation is equally astonishing. It's not just about fire control. Any spell is easy to learn but difficult to master, and in the later stages, the difficulty increases exponentially. Therefore most cultivators only have a superficial taste of spells. In their minds, as long as their cultivation level improves, they can cultivate higher level spells without the need to stubbornly struggle with lower level spells. Sumu was helpless. Otherwise he wouldn't have invested such luck in the fire control technique either. Directly practicing advanced spells, isn't it fragrant? Bang! Flaming birds scattered and turned into wisps of sparks, enveloping the blackened stones on the ground once again. Hoo-hoo! It's like a real shooting star falling from the sky. Between the flying stones, waves of breaking through the sky sound. This power, even if you hit the 6th level of Qi training, you will vomit blood. Sumu put down the stone and excitedly took a few steps in place. By the way, can I do this? A small flame appeared on the nail. The flames kept compressing and turning into dark red balls, the size of soybeans. Sumu flicked his finger. Bang! The fireball collided with the stone, suddenly exploding and instantly creating a deep pit. Cracks are densely distributed on the stone, almost collapsing. Damn it! Sumu was once again shocked by his own methods. This explosive power is almost surpassing the first-level fireball technique. And the spiritual power he uses is less than 1/10 of the fireball technique. The speed is several times faster than fireball. The target is small, the power is great, and it is easy to use. This skill is used for sneak attacks, it is simply a divine skill. I'll call you, fire bullet technique, in the future. Sumu experimented for a while again and became more proficient in the technique of controlling fire. Yi Inying did not come in to check the commotion that Su Mu made in the room. Su Mu has explained it before. Do not enter while he is practicing without his permission. Yi Inying has always firmly adhered to it. Although Yi Inying has poor talent, low cultivation, no experience, and no heart, she is obedient. Very obedient. The kind of obedience and obedience. For Su Mu, this is already sufficient. The system panel at this time. Master of Fire Control Technique. 0/3200, Qi Yun value. 7543, including the 10-point increase in Qi luck today. Su Mu really wants to directly elevate the fire control technique to an extraordinary level. But he also knows that, no way. The memory of Grandmaster's extraordinary journey is too vast to absorb for a while. Especially at the moment of breakthrough, various insights can instantly manifest and cause mental division in people. Grandmaster level fire control technique is temporarily sufficient. Continuing to improve is equivalent to the difference between a child taking a cloud bomb and a mushroom bomb. Anyway, while killing the enemy, he has to die. Another one is the mana limit. Skills are too high. The blue bar is too low. Can't unleash it. After using the fire control technique, gradually improve. First, improve other skills. Increase the chance of survival. Su Mu has set his sights on another spell. Light body technique. The function of lightness technique is very simple, it is to reduce body weight. Increase movement speed. His lightness technique is now at the proficiency level. After application, it can reduce body weight by 30%. It's like a person putting down a load of 30 pounds at once. Speed increase, as you can imagine. As the cultivation level of cultivators increases, their physical fitness also increases. However, compared to the increase in spell power, it is still much worse. Adding lightness technique and not adding lightness technique are completely different things. Unless it's a body refining cultivator. With the lightness technique, he has gained an additional life-saving skill. After all, there is a family and a mouth. We must cherish our lives. System. Add more points. Light body technique plus 86, proficient in light body technique, 0/400, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. Light body technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Light Body Technique Memory. Numerous unfamiliar and familiar memories emerge. That feeling. Just like being locked in a closed room, endlessly practicing a spell until it breaks through. While acquiring memories, Su Mu felt a sense of loneliness in his heart. Relieved for a while. Su Mu needed the technique and began to try the upgraded lightness technique. Buzz. Invisible power emerges in the nails, permeating into the limbs and bones with the casting of spells. This power is intangible and intangible, yet it truly exists. Quickly, the strength and body merged perfectly. In an instant, Su Mu felt as if he had put down 1,000 pounds of heavy burden on his shoulders, his whole body suddenly lightened. It's like floating up. Of course, this is just an illusion. The lightness technique does not inflate the body, but in a way that Su Mu temporarily cannot understand, it removes some of the weight from the body. Bang! Su Mu lightly moved and instantly flashed several meters away. And he hasn't put in all his strength yet. Next, Su Mu moved back and forth in the room, becoming proficient in the power of lightness techniques. In my ears, there is the howling wind. In the narrow room, relying on movement, the sound of breaking through the air was visible, indicating Su Mu's speed. This feeling. Stronger than the lightness skills in previous martial arts novels. Su Mu estimated in his heart. Mastery level lightness technique, at least subtracted 50% of his body weight. Imagine what it would be like for a person weighing over 50 pounds to have the speed and explosive power of a person weighing over 100 pounds. The impact force of a bullet is only 300 kilograms. But 300 kilograms of force, concentrated in a small bullet. But it can tear air and pierce through steel. The principle of lightness and bullets is somewhat similar. The only difference is, Su-Mu's body cannot shrink, it will create huge air resistance. After fully integrating the memory of this enhancement, Su-Mu reopened the system and made improvements. Light Body Technique plus 10. Light Body Technique plus 10. Light Body Technique plus 10. Complete Lightness Technique, 0 out of 800. The perfect level of lightness technique made Su-Mu feel like he had lost the constraint of gravity. Give your feet a little force. Bang! The figure disappeared into place in an instant, and when it reappeared, it had already reached the corner of the wall. Looking at the nearby wall, Su-Mu let out a deep breath with lingering fear. The speed is too fast, almost hitting a wall. The room was too small, and Su-Mu dared not make any big moves. He moved back and forth for a while, then adapted and stopped. Su-Mu estimated in his heart that the body weight lost from this lightness technique is about 70%. It has only increased by 20% compared to the level of proficiency, but the speed has exaggerated by more than double. This kind of speed increase, Su-Mu thought for a moment before he understood. Overall, the body weight at the perfect level is only 20% less than that at the proficient level. But when calculated based on remaining weight, the remaining weight at the perfect level is only half of that at the proficient level. So doubling it is not surprising. The speed improvement in the future is likely to be exponential. My current speed is at least 3 times that of before. Those of the same level of cultivators can only eat dust behind me unless they use imperial weapons to fly. Su-Mu exclaimed with excitement. After all, this is the cultivation world, running fast is better than flying. However, for Su-Mu now, it is already sufficient. By the way, if I hold a sharp weapon and charge towards the enemy at such a speed, the power I unleash will probably be equally amazing. By this calculation, the lightness technique can not only be used for escaping and rushing, but also an extremely powerful combat technique. Su-Mu has begun to fantasize about the power of master-level lightness techniques. After dinner, accompanying his wife to help take care of his daughter for a while, Su-Mu returned to the miscellaneous room. In the future, when you have money, you must hire a few servants to take care of Ying. Recalling his wife's tired face, Su-Mu felt heartbroken. He talks about taking care of himself, but in fact, he can't help anything except cook. With the current focus on improving spells, even the time spent with them is limited. Improve your strength as soon as possible and get out of the sea of suffering as soon as possible. Su-Mu dare not guarantee, nor dare he gamble, when his wife won't be able to hold on. Poor couple, sorry for everything. Don't test human nature with money. Add more points. Add more points. Add more points. Only strength is everything. Suppressing the discomfort in his brain, Su-Mu raised his lightness technique to a master level in one breath. The room is too small, and he no longer dares to conduct the movement experiment. After being blessed with the lightness technique, I just tried waving my arms a few times. This feeling. Su-Mu's eyebrows wrinkled slightly, and he continued to speed up his arm waving. The room was filled with intense sounds of breaking through the air. When Su-Mu increased his strength to the extreme, a fierce appearance tore through the air with a crackling sound. Like broken porcelain. He stopped and slowly lifted his trembling arm, covered in a blur of flesh and blood. Gone. Su-Mu had no idea at all. When his speed reaches a certain level, air resistance will also cause harm to his body in turn. Now he is like a papery car, driving at F1 speed. If it erupts with all its might, it may be dismembered on the spot. No, I can't even explode. The air resistance of my body far exceeds that of my arms, and my strength is not enough to push my body to break through the air resistance. The speed increase this time is likely to be less than 30% in a row. Nima. I knew I wouldn't have added so much. It's a waste. It's difficult to improve his physical fitness for a while, unless he finds another body refining technique to practice. Forget it, we'll consider this issue later, at least it should be enough now. At this point, his property panel. Master of Light Body Technique, 0/1600, Chi Yun value. 6257, now he has the ability to resist fire in battles and the ability to run lightly, greatly improving his life-saving ability. The next step is to improve, which is naturally a profitable alchemy technique. Su Mu now knows two types of pills. A Pai Gu Dan. A gathering chi pill. Both are first-order low-level pills, but their value is vastly different. Juki Dan is almost 10 times more powerful than Pi Gu Dan. In addition to the material itself and the difficulty of refining, the value of pills also needs to consider their scarcity. Pi Gu Dan can be replaced with cheap meat, so its price is low. Gathering chi pill doesn't work. This has resulted in the high price of Juki Dan. Similarly, its raw materials are much higher than those of Pi Gu Dan. Su Mu was unable to practice. It goes without saying which of the two elixirs improves. Another day has passed. Su Mu elevated his ability to refine chi gathering pills to a master's level in one breath. My mind is filled with vast experiences of refining chi gathering pills. Unfortunately, he currently has no materials on hand and is unable to conduct the experiment. The remaining energy value is enough to further elevate the refining skill of the gathering chi pill to the level of a master, but Su Mu did not do so. Because it's so foolish. The master-level chi gathering pill refining technology is already sufficient to reduce the failure rate to 0. Continuing to improve in this situation would be a pure waste. Of course, the higher the alchemy, the better the quality of the pills produced. But in Su Mu's current situation, if the quality of the pill is too good, it is actually asking for trouble. If it weren't for the current financial situation being too weak and afraid of refining failure, he wouldn't have improved further if he had been elevated to the level of perfection. Then he elevated his main cultivation technique, Lingyan Ju, to a perfect level, increasing his cultivation speed by 1/3. Lingyan Ju is almost a cultivation technique on the streets of corruption, and has no other effect except for a certain increase in fire spells. Upon reaching the satisfactory level, Su Mu will no longer make any further improvements. He considered that he might take a large amount of pills in the future, and the effect of the Lingyan Ju would be greatly reduced. If he continued to improve, the cost-effectiveness would not be high. And he is also considering switching to a more powerful martial art in the future. At this point, his property panel is Name. Su Mu, Life. 62/104, Realm. Practice Chi 3 layers, 328/400, Practice. Lingyan Ju Perfect, 0 out of 800, Skill. Alchemy. Mastery of Pi Gu Dan, 241/400, Master of Gathering Chi Pill, 0/1600 Spell. Master of Fire Control Technique, 0/3200, Proficient in Fireball Skills, 129/200, Proficient in Wind Blade Technique, 108/200, Master of Light Body Art, 0/1600 Divine Power. None, Chi Yun value. 4689, turn off the system and do not make any further improvements. One is that his strength is already sufficient, continuing to add it would be a bit wasteful. It's better to wait until you have stronger and more suitable skills in the future before using them. On the other hand, his body and mind are a bit overwhelmed. Although we can continue to improve and not collapse, there is no need to be abused, and we can definitely improve bit by bit. Also, if they don't work anymore, their family won't be able to eat. Ignite the spirit wood. Preheat the Dan stove. Input medicinal herbs. Su Mu still refined the Pi Gu Dan. He only has the materials for the Pai Gu Dan on hand now. Still following the same steps. Still the original recipe. At this moment, Su Mu felt an unprecedented sense of ease and contentment. Through his master-level fire control technique, he is not only able to control the fire perfectly, but also able to perceive changes in the properties of the pills inside the furnace through feedback from the flames. The flame is like an extension of his eyes and touch. It seems that I still underestimate the Grandmaster level fire control technique. Su Mu sighed in his heart. Due to the perfect control of temperature changes, the refining time of this pill has been shortened by about a quarter compared to before. The stove lid is open, and the fragrance of medicine fills the air. 12 round, yellow-orange pills flew out of the furnace and landed in the palm of Su Mu's hand. 2 of the pills, as if coated with a film, emitted a faint fluorescence. High-quality Pai Gu Dan. Su Mu was pleasantly surprised. He has been refining pills for so many years, and this is the first time he has refined a top-quality Pai Gu Dan. He collected the pills and opened the system panel. As expected. Originally proficient in Pai Gu Dan, 241/400, which has been raised to 261/400. With just one alchemy, he increased his proficiency by 20 points, which is more than what he had previously improved by refining 20 times. This should be what we call the rising tide and the rising ship. The rebirth of the fire control technique has driven the rapid advancement of the refining technology of the Pai Gu Dan. The next 2 rounds also confirmed Su Mu's idea. Every successful refining can increase proficiency by 10 to 20 points. At this speed, even without using Qi luck to improve, he can quickly reach a satisfactory level. If there had been such an increase in speed before, how could we have eaten so much dirt for so many years? Recalling the years of cultivation before, Su Mu's heart was filled with tears. In the past, he had neither resources nor talent. Whether it was practicing or alchemy, he was just crossing the river by feeling the stones. Gradually accumulate and try. If you are lucky, you may refine a furnace of waste pills. Bad luck may even cause the furnace to explode and result in bruises all over the body. Fortunately, the hard times have finally passed, and the future will always be good. Speaking of this, he couldn't help but take his wife's baby daughter with a loving expression on his face. If it weren't for this little girl, he wouldn't have known when he would have turned over. Inger, eat this. Su Mu took out a grain of Pai Gu Dan and handed it to Yi Yingying. Ah. No need. I'll just have dinner. After following Su Mu for so long, she naturally knows the value of the Pai Gu Dan. Although not expensive, it is not something their family can afford. Be obedient. Su Mu didn't explain much, just spoke slightly harshly. Yi Yingying puffed up her cheeks and obediently ate it. After finishing, he squinted his eyes and gave a silly smile to Su Mu, saying, "It's delicious." Su Mu couldn't help but laugh. Actually, Pai Gu Dan doesn't have much flavor at all. Normal cultivators will not put it in their mouths to chew and eat, they will swallow it directly. I'm going to the local market to sell the elixir. Wait for me at home. Remember what I said, no one except me should open the door. Yi Yingying pursed her cherry lips and nodded vigorously. For a moment, Su Mu didn't know whether he had married a wife or adopted a daughter. I handed over all the few attack talismans I had on my body to Yi Yingying, and after earnestly instructing her, I pushed open the door and walked out. Looking back at Yi Yingying locking the door inside, Su Mu finally walked out of the alley with peace of mind. The houses in shantytowns belong to the property of Beishifang City, and ordinary people dare not destroy them at will. As long as Yi Yingying does not go out casually, there is still safety. Of course, only during the day. Su Daoyu, are you no longer considering what happened last time? If it's past the full moon, it won't be too late. Sun Daoxiang had been waiting for Su Mu for a long time. He had just left the alley with his front foot when Sun Daoqing followed with his back foot. Bring up the old story again. In fact, when he was improving his cultivation at home these days, Sun Daoqing went to see him, but he ignored him. I didn't expect this old guy to be so persistent. At this moment, Sun Daoqing was still wearing that messy clothes, but his mental state was much better than a few days ago, at least there was no eye droppings at the corners of his eyes. Get lost. Bring up this matter again, don't blame me for being impolite. Su Mu's eyes lit up with cold light. He used to lack strength and would be hypocritical. But now, he is too lazy to talk too much nonsense to the other party. Don't be angry. If you don't want to, then forget it. Sun Daoqing chuckled and said. As if not angry at all. Su Daoyu, now that you have children, the pressure of life must be very high. I have something here. Hey. Don't you leave. Su Mugen didn't want to pay attention to this old guy, so he applied the lightness technique and threw him away directly. With the blessing of the lightness technique, Su Mu quickly arrived at Fengshe and could see the Baisha River located to the east of Beishifang from afar. Under the bright sunshine, the river shimmers with ripples. Some small boats are sailing on the river, and the cultivators on board are holding magic tools and silk screens, fishing for fish and low-level monsters in the river. Perhaps due to the significant increase in strength, the scenery that I used to take a glance at, now I realize it has a unique flavor. When you have enough strength in the future, you must take Inger to go boating on the river. In the past, he dared not even think about how to earn spiritual stones and how to survive. At this moment, he not only has the mood to see the scenery, but also dares to think of some luxurious things. Not daring to appreciate it for too long, Su Mu stepped into the neighborhood market. Passing through familiar streets, Su Mu quickly arrived at the entrance of a pharmacy called Shuolian. In the pharmacy the sound of humming music could be faintly heard. Play the drums tightly, play the gongs slowly, stop the drums and listen to the singing, all kinds of idle talk remain silent for the time being, listen to me sing a song. Spell it, 6,000 words per day, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Five-fold Profit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Five-fold Profit 18. 2 Shopkeeper, why didn't you go to Gulan to listen to the music and start singing at home? Su Mu stepped into the shop and saw a thin and black middle-aged man lying on a rocking chair, squinting his eyes and shaking his head while singing a tune. So it's Master Su Dan. The middle-aged man opened his eyes, turned his head and stood up leisurely. There are all these old tunes in the Gulan, I've been tired of listening to them for a long time. It's not as comfortable as humming them myself. Why? Are you selling Pigu Dan again? Su Mu nodded and took out the 5 refined bottles of Pigu Dan. Can't you save up more and sell it again? It's so fragmented every time. 2. The shopkeeper picked up the pill for examination while complaining. Although his store is small, selling so many bottles at once is a bit disgusting. I also want to. Unfortunately, I'm short of money. Why don't you lend me a little first? Su Mu smiled. He is over 50 years old, so he wouldn't blush awkwardly just because of such a little complaint. If you're willing to give me the elixir, lending you dozens of spirit stones is not a big deal. Dan Lu can't do it. That's the guy I eat with. Su Mu refused at once. He has been in a relationship with the other party for over a decade, and we know each other well and often make jokes. High quality. 2. The shopkeeper picked up one of the glowing pills and smiled at the corner of his mouth. It seems that your alchemy has finally made progress. There is hope for building a foundation in the future. Stop talking nonsense. Su Mu laughed and cursed. Replace all the spirit stones with medicinal herbs for refining the chi gathering pill. Oh. 2. The shopkeeper looked up at Su Mu with a hint of surprise. Why don't you give up? Isn't it good to honestly refine the Pigudan? You can now refine high-quality Pigudan. As long as you keep the quality stable, you will definitely earn more than before. 2. Shopkeeper kindly reminded. Before the success rate of the pill reached 30%, it was basically burning money. Su Mu is not optimistic about the current conditions. Recently, I have had an epiphany and feel that there has been great progress in alchemy techniques. Maybe we can succeed. The profit margin of the Pigudan is too low, and we must fight hard for our wives and children. Su Mu's words revealed some information, so give the other party a preventive shot first. Because of having a wife and children, one should not take risks. Manager 2 reminds me again. Since he followed his father's help in the store, Su Mu has been selling pills here. Although he was praised by his father as rotten wood, after more than 10 years of friendship, he still does not want the other party to go to a dead end. Just sell me, whether it's successful or not is just a matter of a few spiritual stones. Whatever. Don't let me refine the waste pill in time, just let me help you sell it. 2. The shopkeeper collected the Pigudan and turned to enter the back hall. After a while, he retrieved 3 portions of medicinal herbs. The medicinal herb of Juki pill consists of 2 spirit stones and 1 portion. Your pill is only worth 5 spirit stones. If you miss that one, it will be considered as a gift for your daughter. Thank you very much. Su Mu sincerely expressed his gratitude. There are bad people everywhere in this world, but occasionally there are also a few good people. Su Mu put the medicinal herbs into the storage bag, turned around and left the pharmacy, walking towards the direction where the shantytown was located. After buying medicinal herbs, he is now almost penniless. Don't go home, stay in the neighborhood and drink the northwest wind. At an old age, I don't know how to be stable. Don't wait until the end, spending money to marry a wife is cheaper than others. Looking at Su Muyuan's back, shopkeeper 2 rose and continued to lie there humming his own songs. Although their family is not wealthy, they can still maintain this shop without worries about food and clothing. Compared to Su Mu, it's one heaven and one earth. There is a flying sword above the head, turning into a shooting star and flying over. There are majestic spirit beasts roaring on the roadside. The passers-by were dressed in gorgeous robes, shining brightly. Although it is just a small market, it has all 5 internal organs and is available in the cultivation world, all of which are here. Unfortunately, all of this has nothing to do with Su Mu for the time being. He carefully walked through the crowd to avoid conflicts with unfamiliar cultivators. After leaving the market, he used his lightness technique and rushed home as quickly as possible. Sun Daocheng, who was guarding the entrance of the alley, didn't notice for a moment and Su Mu had already passed. Bang bang. Inger. It's me. Yi Yingying looked out through the crack in the door and confirmed that it was Su Mu before quickly opening the door, with a relieved smile on her face. Su Mu walked in and closed the door. Xianggong, why are you so fast today? Yi Yingying leaned in Su Mu's arms and asked. Of course it's because I missed you. Su Mu, who was in a good mood, played a joke with Yi Yingying. I miss you too. Yi Yingying looked at him with tenderness. Cough. Su Mu didn't know what to say for a moment. The two of them hesitated for a while because they had just given birth, and Su Mu dared not go any further. He asked Yi Yingying to return to his bedroom to rest, while he went into the miscellaneous room to prepare the gathering chi pill. Whether we can live a good life in the future depends entirely on today. Su Mu silently prayed in his heart. Put the stove in place, take out the medicinal herbs, and have Su Mu inspect everything. Purple orchid leaf grass, bone wash flower, ink leaf lotus, snake salivary fruit, gathering spirit grass. After checking it over and over again, Su Mu finally felt at ease. He is really shy in his pocket. If he breaks it once, he will probably feel heartbroken for half a day. He closed his eyes and focused, recalling the refining process over and over again, ensuring that everything was flawless. Puff. With a flick of the finger, the flames ignited. Su Mu was completely engrossed. The medicinal herbs were poured in the same order. Under the control of Su Mu, the flames continuously revolved around the Dan furnace, forming a vortex of flames. Due to excessive nervousness, Su Mu's spiritual power was rapidly depleted, and fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. The room was also steaming hot. It's October now, and the weather is already cool, but in Su Mu's room, it feels like summer. When I have money in the future, I have to buy an insulated robe, which is a bit uncomfortable. Although controlled by the fire control technique, the temperature on the body surface will not increase infinitely. It is also uncomfortable to be roasted by the fire. An isolating temperature itself also consumes energy. If he had a robe, it would make it easier for him to refine pills. However, the cheapest robe also requires a medium-grade spirit stone, which is at the same price as his alchemy furnace. It is not yet affordable for him to afford. With the passage of time, the medicinal herbs in the Dan furnace have completely merged. As Su Mu used the method to extract impurities, the medicinal properties began to precipitate, and the medicinal liquid began to fuse and coagulate. Buzz. At the moment when the pill was formed, the runes on the pill furnace suddenly lit up. Get up. Su Mufa's formula flew up tightly, and in the next moment, the furnace lid opened. 11 round and misty pills flew out of it and landed in Su Mufa's palm. 11. 10 are of high quality, only 1 is of medium quality. Su Mu's excited hands trembled slightly, and he took a few deep breaths before calming down. These days seem like a dream to him. From the beginning of life with no hope, one can only accept fate, to the birth of their daughter, suddenly awakening their system and transforming their strength. Everything is like a dream. Make him feel unreal. Afraid of waking up the next day with nothing, I couldn't bear to see my wife's tired appearance. Until this moment, holding the chi-gathering pill in his hand, the tangible feeling finally calmed him down. Everything is virtual, only what is held in the hand is real. In fact, at the master level of his chi-gathering pill, it is only natural for him to succeed in refining, but it would be strange if he fails to refine. He is only so nervous because he takes it too seriously. He put 10 of them into a bottle, left one in his mouth, swallowed it, and began to close his eyes to restore spiritual power in his body. The chi-gathering pill enters the abdomen and immediately transforms into medicinal power, spreading throughout the body. Su Mu felt like his body was soaking in clear and cool spring water, creating a sense of transparency from the inside out. The perfect level spirit flame technique is in operation, and the little spiritual energy around him is like a migratory bird returning to its nest, pouring into his body one after another. The absorption speed of spiritual energy has increased by more than 50%. No wonder the gathering chi pill is so popular. Su Mu's heart was both shocked and delighted. Surprisingly, the effect of the pill is so strong. Fortunately, this medicine was refined by him. After an hour, Su Mu's spiritual power was completely restored in his body, and there was even a slight improvement, which was equivalent to his 2 or 3 days of hard work. It's really refreshing to take medicine for a while, it's always refreshing to keep taking it. Open the system to check, and your cultivation has indeed increased a bit. He has been in the system for so many days, and this is the first time his cultivation has been improved. If he takes pills every day in the future, he feels like he can break through the 4 layers of chi cultivation in 2 to 3 months. Of course, in addition to the chi-gathering pill, there are also reasons for improving martial arts skills. This improvement speed is more than 10 times faster than he used to be. Should we elevate the Lingyan technique to a higher level? At the thought of being able to elevate to the 4th level of chi cultivation, Su Mu suddenly felt a bit impatient. But think it over for now. His primary goal is not to improve his cultivation, but to lift himself out of poverty and become rich. With a master-level fire control technique, he currently does not need to rely on improving cultivation to enhance his strength. Next, Sumu continued to work hard and refined the other 2 medicinal herbs into a chi-gathering pill. In the end, a total of 34 chi-gathering pills were harvested, including 29 of the highest grade, 4 of the middle grade, and 1 of the highest grade. After collecting all the pills and instructing his wife, Sumu left the house again. I didn't meet Sun Daoqing this time, and I don't know if something is missing or if I have already given up. After arriving in the local market, Sumu did not go to the Snow Lotus pharmacy owned by the 2 shopkeeper, but instead turned to the largest pharmacy in the local market, the Song family pharmacy, which sold Ju Qi Dan. It's not that he's ungrateful, and his alchemy skills have improved too quickly. If the shopkeeper too had any ulterior motives, their only bit of affection might have dissipated. I can only repay the other party in another form when I have the opportunity in the future. This Taoist doesn't know what you want to buy. A maid dressed in a blue Taoist robe, tall and slender, with a beautiful mole at the corner of her eye and a smile on her lips, greeted her. Although Su Mu's attire was full of the shabby demeanor of a low-level cultivator, the woman still warmly received him. It's not because of her high quality, it's just because it's her job. I want to sell Ju Qi Dan. I wonder if you accept it here. Su Mu asked. Although I have lived here for decades, it is still my first time coming to the Song family pharmacy. He was too embarrassed to sell the mid to low-grade Pai Gu Dan he had refined before, even if someone else took it. Of course we do. I don't know how much you want to sell. Upon hearing that Su Mu was going to sell the gathering Qi pill, the woman's eyes lit up slightly. Ju Qi Dan is a highly sought-after pill, which is basically in short supply. If she can purchase it in large quantities, there will be many rewards in the store. 30 pills. 30 pills. The woman's face was slightly stiff. Is that all? Previously, she also received alchemists who sold medicine, such as Juki pill, which was a first-order pill. Each time she took at least a few hundred pills, most of which were in the thousands. She has even seen tens of thousands of people a few times. Dozens of pills, that's really it. Do you want to test the pill? Su Mu asked calmly, as if unable to see the awkwardness in the other person's expression. When, of course. The woman's face returned to normal. Although 30 seeds may be a bit small, even the smallest mosquito is still flesh. Besides, even a maid has no right to drive people away. Please follow me. Receive Su Mu to the back hall compartment, and then the woman turns around and leaves. Not long after, a bald old man followed the woman in. Are you selling pills? Take them out. The bald old man is clearly a bit impatient. But due to the rules in the store, I had to take over. Su Muchuan didn't see it. Take out 3 bottles of pills and hand them over. At first, the bald old man didn't pay too much attention until he saw the top-notch Qi gathering pill, and his expression became slightly solemn. He took a sniff under his nose, then scraped off some powder to taste it, and his expression suddenly changed. Did you refine this pill? He looked at Su Mu, unsure. From the color and taste of the pills, it can be seen that these Qi gathering pills have just been refined. This is highly likely to indicate that the other party is an alchemist, rather than switching hands from others. Although Su Mu in front of him is a bit old, he is able to refine top-notch Qi gathering pills, and his ability to refine Qi gathering pills has at least reached a satisfactory level. This is not easy at all. This indicates that the other party has the ability to refine high-quality gathering Qi pills in large quantities. Although the Song family has stronger second-level alchemists, there are not many who can refine high-quality Qi gathering pills in large quantities. It's me. Su Mu nodded. There's nothing to hide about this thing. In the future, he will sell in large quantities, and even if he wants to hide it, he cannot conceal it. The reason why they came to the Song family pharmacy to sell is because the other party has a strong back end, and this thing is not worth mentioning in their eyes, nor is it worth thinking about. Upon seeing Su Mu's affirmative answer, the bald old man fell silent for a moment and said, "If you are willing to sign a contract with our pharmacy to sell our Juki pill in fixed quantities every month, I can purchase your pill at 80% of the market price." After all, they also want to make money, and it is impossible to purchase at the market price completely. "If it's 90%, I'll agree," Su Mu said. The supply of Ju Qi Dan is in short supply, so there is no need to worry about not selling it. The refining process is entirely his own effort, and the other party is equivalent to doing nothing and getting 10% for nothing. So this price is not low. Of course, he can also sell on his own in the market, but without a store as an endorsement, buyers and sellers cannot trust each other, which can be very troublesome. Su Mu was worried about his wife and didn't dare to waste time on such things. "Impossible. Unless you pass the assessment and join our pharmacy." The bald old man firmly refused Su Mu's price. "Forget it then." Su Mu shook. The reason for refusing is not only because the price offered by the other party did not satisfy him, but also because he did not want to be bound by the contract. He doesn't plan on refining the gathering Qi pill for a lifetime. Finally, the bald old man purchased his batch of pills at a market price of 70%. And promised to welcome him to sign the contract at any time. Su Mu readily agreed. Although only 70% of the market, the 30 gathering Qi pills also allowed Su Mu to harvest 27 inferior spirit stones. The ordinary medium-grade Juki pill comes in pieces, while Su Mu's is of the highest grade, which is 1.2 times that of the medium grade and 1.5 times that of the highest grade. Finally, the whole number is rounded up. After deducting the cost of 6 spirit stones, he made a net profit of 20.1 yuan this time. If we include the 3 eaten midway and the remaining 1 on our body, the overall profit can be as high as 5 times. Alchemists are really riding horses to make money. At this moment, Su Mu finally felt the goodness of alchemy. P.S. Seeking support. New books are not easy. Please support us all. Feel free to raise your opinions. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Buying books. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Buying books. 27 inferior spirit stones. Su Mu replaced 10 of them with medicinal herbs for refining Qi gathering pills, and the remaining 17 were prepared to purchase some things. Just buy the medicinal herbs directly from the Song family pharmacy. Guest, please take your time. Although Su Mu's transaction volume was small, the maid politely sent him out. Because I knew he was an alchemist, my attitude became much more enthusiastic. After leaving the Song family pharmacy, Su Mu walked towards the market dedicated to setting up stalls in Beishifeng City. Black-scaled beast meat. 2 pounds of inferior spirit stone. Talismans. Talismans. They are all high-quality talismans. If the effect is not good, don't pay. 10 complete tonifying pills. Taking 1 pill can make you powerful for 3 days. The market is bustling with sounds of selling, shouting, and bargaining, one after another, much livelier than the shops. Su Mu used to be a regular here. It's just that I've been struggling with financial difficulties in the past few months, and I have to take care of my wife, so I haven't been here for a long time. Ha! Isn't this Lao Su? I haven't seen you for a long time. A short, but very burly meat man looked at Su Mu walking and exclaimed in surprise. My wife has been staying at home since giving birth. Su Mu said with a smile. This man was known by Du Mao when he set up a stall here before. I see. Congratulations. Congratulations. Du Mao arched his hand towards Su Mu and said congratulations. Thank you very much. Su Mu returned the gift. Later, Du Mao helped him cut 2 pounds of monster meat. It looks like you're getting rich. You're willing to eat meat. Du Mao skillfully cut off a piece of rib meat, picked it up with oil paper, and handed it to him. When cutting the meat, you can clearly see Du Mao's left hand with 3 missing fingers. My wife has just given birth and must make up for it. Su Mu took the meat, handed over a lower-grade spirit stone, and bid farewell before leaving. Then I went to the stall to buy lingmi, spent 4 inferior lingshi, and bought 20 kilograms of lingmi. Put the two together, there are a total of 5 inferior spirit stones. Previously, it was equivalent to half a month's income. And these things can be eaten for a maximum of 7 or 8 days. I never dared to be so extravagant before. Then Su Mu walked towards the stalls selling talismans and purchased 5 forbidden talismans. This type of talisman can reinforce the wall, and if attached to a door, it can form a sealing force, making it difficult for people to open it. The main reason for buying band symbols is for the safety of Yi Yingying. When he is not at home, he also has some self-protection power. In addition to the forbidden talisman, he also bought 3 amulets, which he left for Yi Yingying to protect himself. 1 lower-grade spirit stone for a forbidden talisman, and 1 lower-grade spirit stone for 2 amulets. Together, they cost 11 yuan. Including the money for buying meat and spiritual rice, Su Mu only has 2 inferior spiritual stones left in his hands. Lingshi really doesn't withstand flowers. Su Mu sighed in his heart. Just as he was about to leave, he saw a book stall. I couldn't help but stop and walked over. He is planning to sell several more spells back to practice, so that when he encounters any crisis in the future, he can have more options to improve and cope with it. Books that looked quaint were packed with small stalls. Correct explanation of talisman, longevity technique, detailed explanation of Pigu Dan, thunder sword technique, complete collection of fire spells, complete collection of Qi training spells, summary of Qi training breakthroughs, top 10 precautions for alchemists. These books may seem intimidating, but in fact, they are all the most basic books, and even the body repair swordsmanship in them is a bit interesting. Su Mu used to be a regular in the market, and he has seen these books countless times. Without wasting time on those miscellaneous books, Su Mu directly picked up the complete collection of Qi training spells. How much does this book cost? The bookseller is a little old man who is nailing his nails, with many age spots on his face, estimated to be in his 90s. Upon hearing Su Mu's words, he immediately extended 5 fingers. 5 inferior spirit stones. Su Mu didn't say anything, threw the book away, got up, and left. Hey! Hey! Don't leave. We can discuss it. How about 2 pieces? 1 piece. 1 piece. It's too low to sell. Upon hearing the old man's words, Su Mu stopped and walked back. The books on the old man's stall have long been sold out. If Su Mu doesn't find it troublesome, he can definitely borrow a few books from a cultivator he used to know. It's difficult to refine just by reading books, he never knew how many times he had been tricked before. I'll give you 2 more Pai Gu Dan and sell me this thunder sword technique book. Damn it. You're too stingy, right? Do you know how hard it is for me to copy a book? At least 5. Copying books. Ghosts believe you. Although there is no printing technology in this world, there is watermark technology. Copying a book doesn't take much time, and the only trouble is binding. 2. Just don't sell them. Sell it. If I meet you, the old man's underwear will accompany me inside. The old man complains, but he is very quick to collect things. Su Mu took the book and briefly flipped through it. After confirming that it was not damaged, he put it in a storage bag and left the market. As he walked out of the neighborhood, Su Mu took a deep breath and felt an unprecedented sense of security in his heart. It's because, he made money. It's not enough. Just now he went to the place where he rented a house in the neighborhood and asked, and found that the rent has increased again, and he needs to pay a high deposit, and many conditions have been set. There was a feeling of not wanting to rent it to him, and Sumu didn't know if he was overthinking it. Fallen leaves blew from the distant Baiha forest, filling the roads in the shantytown with dirt and covering up the foul-smelling excrement. It's okay in the neighborhood, there are dedicated people responsible for cleaning and sanitation. No one cares about such things in the shantytown, it's all up to voluntary thinking. So it is inevitable that some monks who seek to save time will litter the streets at will. It's autumn now, approaching winter, and the weather is getting cooler, but it's still slightly better. If it's hot summer, it's almost impossible to walk. Fortunately, the people living here are all cultivators. If they were ordinary people, the plague would probably have erupted long ago. Actually, going to the mortal world is also quite good. I can't afford the shipping fee. The area where the Qinghe sword sect is located is mostly barren mountains and ridges. It's not that the Qinghe sword sect has any special quirks, but only these places have spiritual materials and energy. And the areas where ordinary people live are basically close to the center of the continent, which has been fully developed, with thin spiritual energy and rare spiritual materials. The only Lingshan and Dechuan have long been occupied by the Great Gate sect. Jin Dan sects like the Qinghe sword sect can only come to this remote place where birds don't take a shit, develop and manage themselves. In such places, it is very difficult for cultivators to survive, and ordinary people are just dead. So there are basically no mortals. Everyone in this world can cultivate immortality, but there is a huge difference in talent between them. There is no sect willing to accept talents like Sumu in the mortal gathering area. Only in places like the Qinghe sword sect can one become a cultivator through hard grinding, and those who cannot be ground are already dead. The Qinghe sword sect is located tens of thousands of miles away from the nearest mortal kingdom, and the cost of transportation alone is 10 medium-grade spirit stones. So Sumu in the past couldn't even think about it. Be careful to avoid unknown objects that occasionally appear on the ground. Sumu quickly arrived at the entrance of the alley where he lived. This is a short distance from Beishifang City and is located in the middle of a shantytown. If you walk more than 2 or 3 miles outside from here, it's Baihalin. Many cultivators make a living by entering the Baiha forest, hunting monsters, collecting medicinal herbs, mining, and collecting resources. In the entire Beishifang City, there are only a small number of people like Su Mu who rely on alchemy for a living. Su Daoyu, we're meeting again. Sun Daoqing rushed out of the nearby alley and stopped in front of Su Mu. Her hair was scattered, her whole body was messy, and her eyes were bloodshot. Sun Daoyu, if it's still that matter, don't mention it. A hint of resentment flashed in Su Mu's eyes. This old guy is really haunted. Su Daoyu misunderstood. At that time, I was indeed reckless and talking nonsense. I apologize to you first. No need. Just don't bother me in the future. Su Mu was about to leave when Sun Daoqing reached out again to stop him. Don't worry, Su Daoyu. I came to see you for a good reason this time. Sun Daoqing said with a smile. Good thing. What good thing? Su Mu frowned. It's hard for him to imagine what good things could happen to someone like Sun Daoqing. I recently met a big employer who wants me to refine a batch of jade marrow pills. However, I am a bit busy alone, so I would like to invite you to come with me. I can pay you 2 inferior spirit stones a day, and I can also give you the formula of the jade marrow pills. The price offered by Sun Daoqing can be said to be extremely generous. Not to mention 2 inferior spirit stones every day, just the Dan Fong and Dan Ju are already valuable. Jade Marrow Pill is a second-order pill that improves cultivation qualifications and strengthens physical fitness. It is much more precious than Qi Gathering Pill. If it had been in the past, he would have been willing to give Su Mu the Dan Fong and Dan Ju for free. But now, the weasel pays New Year's greetings to the chicken. What kind of kindness can it have? No need. I still have to take care of my wife and daughter at home. Su Mu refused in one fell swoop and quickly walked away, allowing Sun Daoqing to shout from behind. This bastard! I'm not even hooked. Sun Daoqing's eyes lit up with anger. P.S. Your support is the driving force for new books to survive. Thank you very much. You can raise any questions. If it can be changed, it must be changed. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Killing the Crisis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Killing the Crisis. Inger, stay at home while I visit the next door. Su Mu walked out of the house and knocked on the next door. Creak. The door opened from inside, revealing two chubby figures. A man and a woman, both in their 30s. The man's name is Jian, and the woman's name is Li Maching. When Su Mu first arrived, he visited them and occasionally greeted them when he went out, which can be considered quite familiar. There are only two types of people who can become fat in Beishifeng City. One is the children of a big family in the city, and the other is those who have practiced special martial arts. The reason why the two live in a shantytown is self-evident. Su Daoyu, why do you have time to come over? Jian squeezed out a smile. Li Maching beside him had a slightly displeased expression. These days, the little girl has been crying and disturbing the two of you. Please don't blame the two Taoist friends. Here are a few gathering qi pills, so let's take them as compensation. Speaking, Su Mu handed over the bottle containing the gathering qi pill. Gathering qi pill. Jian and his wife were directly shocked. A gathering qi pill is like an inferior spiritual stone, which is worth their monthly rent. Moreover, according to Su Mu's tone, it is unlikely that only one pill will be placed. This is too valuable. Su Daoyu, let's take it back. Jian pushed away with his mouth, but he couldn't use any force on his hands. The wife beside her, Li Maching, had a gleam in her eyes and couldn't help but want to reach out. Su Mu smiled and placed the pill in Jian's hand, which he wanted to take but dared not. A small gift, no respect. If there is anything wrong in the future, please forgive me. He only put 3 qi gathering pills inside, not too much or too little, but it should be enough to maintain good neighborhood relationships. Su Daoyu is too polite. We are all neighbors and should have helped each other. It's normal for children to cry and fuss. Actually, both of us husband and wife really like children. Jian put the qi gathering pill into his storage bag, and his smile became incredibly sincere. Li Maching's displeased face also rippled with a passionate smile. These days, Xilinger's crying and fuss have indeed caused a lot of trouble for the couple, but it's just that it's difficult to say anything due to face saving. But now. That crying and noise is so pleasant to the ear. Thank you very much for your understanding, both of you. Su Mu once again arched his hand to thank you. Su Daoyu. Jian looked around the alley behind Su Mu and made sure there was no one nearby before lowering his voice and saying, I've seen you and Lao Suntu walking quite close lately. You better be careful. I saw him enter the Li brothers' house the day before yesterday. Thank you for the reminder. Su Mu's gaze flickered for a moment, without saying much. Farewell and leave. As for the house on the other side, there is no need to visit because it is currently vacant. Returning home, recalling Sun Daoqing's actions in the past few days, Su Mu began to feel restless. We must get rid of this old guy. Although it is not 100% certain that Sun Daoqing wants to harm him, Su Mu cannot afford to gamble. For the sake of his wife and daughter, this kind of thing must be stifled in the cradle. He returned to the miscellaneous room, opened the newly purchased complete book of spells, and flipped to the page that recorded invisibility. After careful memorization and contemplation, start practicing. Like most low-level spells, invisibility is also easy to learn but difficult to master. It only took Su Mu half an hour to learn. Borrowed Yi Yingying's bronze mirror and placed it in front of him. Su Mu kneaded the magic formula with his hands, and his spiritual power surged in his body, transforming it into wonderful magical power that covered his entire body. He disappeared from the mirror out of thin air. However, after only 3 breaths, his figure reappeared. Time is too short, and even a slight movement will disappear. It's completely useless. But this is also normal. The first order magic has a very small effect. If each one has astonishing power, then everyone has practiced magic, who would still buy magic tools. Especially in the entry-level stage, it's not even as good as chicken ribs. Generally, cultivators give up after a little exploration. It's really a waste of time. It's better to focus on improving your cultivation, earning money, and purchasing more powerful magical tools when you have time. But Su Mu is different. He has a system. Open the system interface, and it indeed displays invisibility skills. Introduction to Invisibility Technique, 1/100, Su Mu, who is already familiar with the road, directly invested 99 points on it. Proficient in Invisibility Technique, 0/200, it's not difficult to get started and become proficient. If Su Mu works hard to cultivate, it can be achieved in 1 or 2 months. So it is easy to integrate cultivation experience. Recently, he has gained some insights from the continuous use of the system. It's actually not cost-effective to increase the chi luck value in the early stages of a skill. Normal people tend to find it more difficult to practice spells as they progress further down, and there are also bottlenecks when breaking through levels. The chi luck value completely ignores this point. A little experience at the beginner level and a little experience at the master level consume exactly the same amount of energy. In reality, the difficulty of increasing experience at the Grandmaster level may be several tens of times higher than at the entry-level level. In this situation, practicing on your own at the beginning and using chi points when it becomes difficult to improve later on is actually the most cost-effective way to use it. However, this time in order to quickly nip the crisis, he can only use his chi luck value. Su Mu used Invisibility Technique again, this time maintaining more than 5 breaths and allowing his body to perform small movements. However, it's still chicken ribs. Su Mu not only hesitated a bit. If he doesn't achieve the desired effect in the end, isn't it a waste of investment? Take a deep breath, suppress these chaotic thoughts, and start to improve again. Since you have made a decision, don't hesitate anymore. Invisibility Technique plus 50. Invisibility Technique plus 50. Invisibility Technique plus 50. Proficient in Invisibility Technique, 0/400, this time Su Mu used it again and was able to take 20 breaths of invisibility, and could walk slowly. Unfortunately, it still couldn't achieve the effect he wanted. Continue to improve. Invisibility Technique plus 10. Invisibility Technique plus 10. Invisibility Technique plus 10. Invisibility Technique complete, 0/800, this time, invisibility has finally made a qualitative leap. Can be invisible for 60 breaths, and can run freely without disappearing. Almost done. Chi luck is precious, and Su Mu doesn't want to spend too much on such things. Time flies in a blink of an eye. On this evening, Su Mutsai decided to go out and sell pills in the local market. Before leaving, he pasted 5 forbidden talismans on the 4 walls of his bedroom and on the roof. I may come back later today. If there is any danger, you should immediately activate these 5 talismans. And this. Su Mu took out 2 amulets and placed them in Yi Yingying's soft palm. It's dangerous outside, you should keep it. Yi Yingying wants to decline. Since she married Su Mu, she has never seen him go out at night. Even if Yi Yingying's mind is pure, she still vaguely realizes something. Be obedient. Su Mu didn't explain much, but Yi Yingying remained obedient as before. After a shout, he took out another talisman from his pocket. It was the talisman that Su Mu once bought for her to ward off evil spirits. Then you can take this, it's not safe at night. Okay. This time Su Mu did not refuse. He remembered the reminders from the teeth man and the moldy broken hand. He has confidence in his own strength. But I'm not sure about those strange things. Just close the door, don't lock it. The bedroom door must be locked tightly. If you come back, I will call you. Yi Ying nodded. A hint of unease rose in my heart. But she didn't say it, she was afraid and worried about Su Mu. Farewell to his wife, walk out of the house, and Su Mu hurried towards the neighborhood. After arriving at the local market, many shops have started packing up and preparing to close. Only a very small number of shops are still open and have become lively, such as Gulen and gambling houses. After arriving at the Song family pharmacy and explaining his purpose, the maid led him into the back hall. The person in charge of testing the medicine is still the bald old man. Because it had only been a few days, the old man still had an impression of Su Mu and mentioned the signing of the contract again, but naturally he was rejected by Su Mu. 4 bottles of gathering chi pill were exchanged for 20 inferior spirit stones, as well as 15 portions of the refining materials for gathering chi pill. After leaving the market, Su Mu purchased 20 kilograms of spirit rice and 5 kilograms of monster meat from a nearby store. Compared to setting up stalls in the market, it is much more expensive, but now that the market has closed, he can only buy from the store. After buying everything, Su Mu did not immediately leave the market, but instead found a hidden corner and practiced his invisibility technique. Then he quietly hid in a small alley near the gambling house. Night falls. The number of people on the street is decreasing, and every household has closed their doors. The cool wind blows, rolling up fallen leaves and flying towards the distance, disappearing into the darkness, as if swallowed by an invisible big mouth. In the brightly lit gambling house, a disheveled figure walked out, cursing profusely. Today is really unlucky. Before coming next time, make sure to consult a diviner to calculate first. Bah! Sun Daoqing spat out thick yellow phlegm, looked at the sky, and quickly quickened his pace. He doesn't want to encounter those weird things. It's okay inside the neighborhood, but outside the neighborhood, you can only seek blessings for yourself. Stepping out of the area covered by gambling house lights, Sun Daoqing held a magic spell in his hand, bang. A walnut-sized ball of light appeared at his fingertips, illuminating the path beneath his feet. This is a first-order spell, light ball spell. Click, click, click. As he walked, Sun Daoqing suddenly frowned and turned around to look. Behind me was pitch black and empty. Strange. Shouldn't it be time yet? Sun Daoqing shook his head and continued forward, but his pace quickened a bit. Not long after leaving the neighborhood, a bright orange light suddenly appeared behind him. Sun Daoqing was taken aback. He didn't look back foolishly, but accelerated and ran forward. 5 green pills emitting a pungent odor appeared in the hand and were thrown fiercely towards the back. The pill flew halfway and suddenly exploded, forming a large cluster of green corrosive gas. But he reacts quickly, and the other party responds faster. Who? A figure, like a shadow, dodged the poison pill in an instant, caught up with him, and overtook him. So fast. Sun Daoqing thought fiercely in his heart. At this moment, a fist-sized, dark red fireball flew out of the opponent's hand and shot towards him. Danger at the moment of seeing the fireball, a huge sense of fear surged in his heart. The distance was too close to avoid, so Sun Daoqing instinctively triggered a life-saving talisman. A blue light film instantly covered his body. He dodged and fled to the left. The next moment. At that moment, the dark red fireball suddenly burst open, like explosives. Boom! The red flames formed a circular shock wave, spreading fiercely towards the surroundings. Pop! The protective technique on Sun Daoqing's body is fragile like an empty bubble. In an instant it was torn to pieces. Within sight, All covered by flames, Sun Daoqing couldn't even feel the pain in time, and his consciousness fell into endless darkness. Who is going to kill me? Leaving only one thought behind, Sun Daoqing's body was directly blown away by the impact of the flames. Puff! When it landed, it was already flesh and blood, with only half of its head left. At the location of the fireball explosion, a half-meter deep pit appeared on the ground, and walls several meters away were shattered by the earthquake. After a few breaths, the figure who had dropped the fireball returned and pulled away the storage bag from Sun Daoqing's waist, disappearing in an instant. The violent explosion echoed through half of the shantytown, but no one came out of the room to check. The previously bustling shantytown suddenly fell silent with the sound of the explosion. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Counting Harvests. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9, Counting Harvests. Who? There is a howling wind in my ears. After being blessed with the lightness technique, Sumu released all his strength for the first time to run. The strong air resistance made him feel like he was walking in mud. In reality, the situation is he is shaped like an electric current, with a distance of several meters in one step, as if riding on the wind. Fortunately, he also had an invisibility spell on him, and it was in the dark that no one could see this amazing scene. The sound of wind carried by the body is also obscured by the night wind, and no one is aware. As Sumu passed by the small alley at his doorstep, he didn't stop and continued to run forward. It wasn't until we were about to leave the shantytown that we slowed down our pace. The moon passes through dark clouds, casting a radiance, and when viewed from afar, one can see the lush trees of Baiha forest in the distance. We can't go any further. Taking advantage of his invisibility skills not disappearing, Sumu quickly flashed into an abandoned house nearby. If the area where Sumu lives is a slum in Beishifeng City, then this area near Baiha forest is the slum within the slums. Clothes do not cover the body, food is not sufficient, and the house where one lives is also ventilated on all sides. The only benefit is that there is no rent here. Sumu hid in the corner of the abandoned house, propped up his ears, listening to every move outside the house, silently counting time in his heart. About half an hour has passed. Except for the night breeze and the roar of distant beasts, there was no movement. It seems that there are no pursuers. Sumu breathed a sigh of relief and once again used an invisibility technique, slowing down his pace and rushing towards home. Hoo-hoo. The night breeze kept blowing past me. The moonlight was once again covered by dark clouds, and the sky and earth were pitch black. In the midst of shadows and shadows, it seemed as if there were ghosts and monsters waving their teeth and claws. In order to avoid being noticed, Sumu could only move forward in the dark. Next time, you may consider practicing a spiritual spell. Sumu thought to himself. I remember there is a telephoto spell in the Encyclopedia of Spells. I wonder if it's useful at night. Dark clouds passed by, and the silver moonlight scattered. The familiar decline of the alley had already appeared in Sumu's sight. Not only did it solve Sun Daoqing's hidden crisis this time, but it also gave him a storage bag. Maybe there was something valuable inside, and it can be said that he gained a lot. Sumu, curious about what was in the storage bag, walked lightly and felt a bit like an arrow returning home. However, thinking that Sun Daoqing was a gambler and messy, I suddenly felt that there was nothing to look forward to. However, the power of compressing fireballs far exceeds my imagination. At that time, he only wanted to kill with one strike and dared not leave his hand, almost compressing the flames to the limit. Sun Daoqing was killed by the explosion on the spot, with no resistance, and even himself was almost injured by the explosion, with a power comparable to that of a previous life's explosive pack. The power of the compressed fireball may have exceeded second-level magic, reaching the level of third-level magic. Not to mention Sun Daoqing practicing 3 layers of qi at once, even if he practiced 5 or 6 layers of qi, without powerful defense methods, he would probably be killed on the spot. The only regret is that the attack speed is too slow and consumes too much time. At that time, he had just started compressing the fireball when Sun Daoqing noticed it. If it weren't for the high level of the lightness technique, it was very likely that Sun Daoqing would have run away. Sun Daoqing is also an old and refined person. When he detects abnormalities, he throws poison pills and runs away without any intention of exploration or combat. Su Mu, who was walking and thinking about things, suddenly felt a slight chill in his back. He turned around suddenly. There is no one behind me. Only the night breeze, rolling up fallen leaves. There are also clothes discarded by unknown families hanging on the wall, dancing in the wind like dried corpses. He quickened his pace with unease in his heart. The coolness on the back is getting heavier and heavier, gradually becoming a bit cold. Su Mu didn't know if it was his own illusion or if there was really something, so he could only desperately accelerate his pace. The coldness grew heavier and heavier, as if carrying ice cubes. There's definitely a problem. He held his breath and ran almost like a sprint towards home. But the icy meaning, like a shadow accompanying him, seemed to stick to his back, freezing his entire body. With his 5 fingers spread out, Su Mu was about to unleash flames when a warm breath suddenly emanated from his chest, spreading throughout his body. In an instant, it offset most of the coldness behind him. At this point, Su Mu had already entered the alley. A few quick steps arrived at the door and pushed it in. Yi Yingying followed his instructions and did not lock the door. Quickly lock the door. With 5 fingers bent and stretched, a large orange flame ignited with a plop. Hush! The fiery eyes transformed into a ferocious fire snake, enveloping his entire body. Su Mu reached out and touched his back. There is nothing strange, only a cold sweat on the back. He reached into his arms again and pulled out the almost completely burned exorcism talisman. There is really evil in the shantytown. Su Mu was a little frightened. He has been living in Beishifeng City for so many years and has only heard of it. Today is the first time he has met him. Although there is some fear, there is not much fear. At that time, it was only inconvenient to use the fire control technique, otherwise, he wouldn't have been unable to kill ordinary evil forces. However, in the future, it's better not to go out late at night as much as possible. If there is only one he can deal with, what if there is a group? After checking his body up and down several times and waiting quietly for half an hour, Su Mu gently knocked on the bedroom door. "Inger, I'm back." There was no response in the bedroom, only a reddened almond eye peeked out from the crack in the door. After confirming multiple times that it was Su Mu, Yi Yingying carefully opened the door. Xianggong. Yi Yingying had nothing, just threw herself into Su Mu's arms and buried her head deeply. "I'm making you worry." Su Mu gently caressed her ink-like hair. "Has Linger slept yet?" Then you should go to bed early too. I want you to hold it." Hee. "Okay." Su Mu reluctantly agreed with a bitter smile. After coaxing the big one to sleep, Su Mu left the bedroom lightly and went to the miscellaneous room. With a flick of his finger, a red flamingo appeared, hovering above his head, illuminating him. Take out the storage bag obtained from Sun Daoqing, refine it, and then take out the contents one by one. A book. A pill furnace. 2 bottles of pills. 5 medicinal herbs. 12 inferior spirit stones. And some ordinary clothes and daily necessities. The book is a book of elixirs, which records the 3 types of elixirs that Sun Daoqing learned in his experience in alchemy. The 3 types of elixirs are Jinyuan pill, rotting bone pill, and jade marrow pill. The function of Jinyuan pill is to replenish essence and qi, and it belongs to the first order pill. It is said to be very popular among regular Golan customers. Rotting bone pill is a poisonous pill that, after being successfully refined, can be shot out through special techniques to form a cluster of corrosive gas. Not only can it corrode flesh and blood, but it can also corrode the practitioner's protective spiritual power. The power is not particularly strong, but the attack range is large and lasts for a long time. At that time, Sun Daoqing threw out the green pill to attack him, which was the bone-rotting pill. Unfortunately, Su Mu, who was blessed with the light body technique, easily dodged and did not exert any power. Jade Marrow Pill is the only second-order pill among the 3 types of pills, and it is also the first second-order pill formula that Su Mu came into contact with. The Jade Marrow Pill has the effect of improving cultivation talent and enhancing physical fitness. Some big families like to use it to lay a foundation for younger generations. At that time, Sun Daoqing still wanted to use the prescription and formula of this pill to deceive him. Reading annotations, I'm afraid he only learned a superficial lesson himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so poor. However, the reason why Sun Daoqing was poor was probably due to laziness, besides his lack of proficiency in learning. He only wanted to get something for nothing all day long. Otherwise, even if one cannot achieve great wealth and prosperity, at least they have no worries about food and clothing. Originally, Su Mu's alchemy skills were not much better than him. He lived in a different neighborhood and even married a wife. If it weren't for the impact of the 2 major sects fighting, they wouldn't have come to the shantytown. I just haven't seen the refining method of infant blood pill, which is somewhat strange. However, Su Mu didn't think much about it. Even if he had it, he would only burn it down in one go. Put away the Dan Shu without much research. Then pick up the elixir and start checking. As an alchemist, my love for the alchemy furnace is ingrained in my bones. Su Mu's eyes lit up as he looked at the alchemy stove in his hand. Surprisingly, this is a first-class intermediate Dan stove. This old man doesn't seem as simple as I thought. Just now, he roasted that the other side was not good at learning skills. Now it seems that it is not what he thought. His elixir is a first-order inferior product, and when he bought it, he spent 110 yuan on inferior spirit stones. The cheapest first-order medium-grade alchemy furnace also costs 300 pieces of inferior spirit stones. I must have 2 brushes in my hand if I can afford such an expensive furnace. I should be considered rich now. Su Mu held the elixir and couldn't put it down. No wonder others say that killing and setting fire is a golden belt. The money is really coming too quickly. I didn't expect this old man to be so poor that he wouldn't even be willing to sell a pill furnace. But that's also true. If he really sold the elixir, he probably wouldn't be able to survive until now. An alchemist without an alchemy furnace is no different from a beggar on the roadside. Reluctantly putting away the elixir, Su Mu finally picked up 2 bottles of elixirs to examine. One bottle is bone-rotting pill, and the other bottle is pigu pill. Su Mu took a brief glance and then put it away. The spirit stone naturally comes into one's pocket. As for the remaining clothes, they were completely worthless and he set fire to them. Put the 3 items back into Sun Daoqing's storage bag. Then Su Mu found a place and buried it. Although I don't think it's possible to cause too much trouble, for safety reasons, I have decided to temporarily hide it for a few days before dealing with it. The next day the autumn sunshine is warm and comfortable. The residents of the alleyway walked out of their homes, either to work in the neighborhood or to hunt and gather in the Baiha forest, each busy. Su Mu observed through the crack in the door for a while, confirmed that there were no problems, and then returned to the miscellaneous room to start refining the gathering chi pill. 3 or 4 days have passed in a row. The wind and waves are calm. The death of Sun Daoqing seems to have no impact on the entire world. At least in the alley where Su Mu is located, no one shows any abnormality. Including the Li brothers who Su Mu always pays attention to. Actually, Su Mu has considered resolving the Li brothers together. However, these 2 people are different from Sun Daoqing. Their strength and methods are unknown, and if they act rashly, they are likely to capsize. So I decided to take a look at the situation first, while improving my strength, and then find opportunities to solve it. Ma Dan. This old guy won't die in that stinky ditch, will he? The person in charge of collecting rent kicked Sun Daocheng's door hard, but saw that there was no response inside. He cursed and went to the next house. The rent here is fixed, unless paid for several months in a row. We will always wait at home when the time comes. Soon, we received Su Mu's house. Starting from next month, the rent will increase to 2 inferior spiritual stones. Why? How do I know why? The orders from above are to live if you want, and move to Beihelin if you don't want to. After speaking, the toothed man turned around and left. Su Mu looked at the other person's back and frowned in contemplation. He originally thought of moving back to the neighborhood after he had money. Nowadays, the prices in shantytowns have increased, and that market is likely to rise even higher. It's really strange that there are only so many people in the neighborhood. They raised the rent so high and drove everyone away. Who will rent it to? End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Thunderbolt Swordsmanship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Thunderbolt Swordsmanship, Sigh. Life won't be easy in the future. I remember a few years ago when I first moved in, I only paid 3 months' rent as a spiritual stone. Jian, who also came out to pay rent, leaned against the door frame and sighed. The current rent growth rate in Beishifang City is quite alarming. Do Jia Dao you know what's going on? Su Mu turned his head and asked. Isn't it the reason for the soul refining sect? Now the Qinghe sword sect on the front line is retreating step by step, and many cultivators are running backwards for safety. This is making room for us. Jian let out another sigh. He has already begun to consider moving further away. Jian's wife Li Maching came out of the room, holding a bamboo-woven dustpan in her hand. Su Dao Yu, the sunflower seeds I just fried. Take them and try them. Li Maching smiled and handed the dustpan to Su Mu. A unique fragrance of nuts permeates from the dustpan. Thank you very much, Li Dao Yu. I'll return the dustpan to you later. Su Mu did not evade. This thing is not worth much money, pushing it back and forth actually appears hypocritical. Don't worry. If you think it's delicious, come and pick it up after you finish eating. Li Maching's chubby face was full of smiles. Since Su Mu gave the qi gathering pill, Li Maching's attitude has been getting better day by day. Just as Su Mu was about to enter the house to plant sunflower seeds, the rent collector had already received the Li brothers at their doorstep. Su Mu stopped and turned to look. Creak. The door opened from inside, and 2 heads popped out simultaneously, moving up and down as if connected together. His face was pale with no trace of blood, and the proportion of black pupils was much higher than normal. At first glance, it seemed as if there was no white eye, and the empty hole was shocking. A hand even whiter than a woman, holding a lower-grade spirit stone, stretched out from inside. 2 spirit stones next month. Taking the spirit stone, the toothed person spoke with some fear, took a few steps back, turned around, and walked down to the next house. The Li brothers stared at Yaran with their eyes, slowly turning as they watched him walk to the next door before suddenly turning their heads and looking at Su Mu not far away. For a while, 6 eyes facing each other. Hee hee. The 2 of them sneered at each other, with a hint of mockery in their eyes, like a big cat looking at a little mouse. Su Mu's heart skipped a beat. Do these 2 people know that I killed Sun Daocheng? No, it's impossible. He was very careful in his actions at that time, and he had done a few days of work in advance. With his invisibility skills, no one could possibly know. 2 people doubt at most. After all, the 3 of them are likely to conspire to harm him. Now that one of them suddenly died, it is normal to suspect him. Su Muqiang suppressed the palpitations in his heart and calmly smiled at the 2 of them. He is no longer the weak chicken he was when we first met, and if the 2 of them really dare to take action, he doesn't mind letting them run away. Faced with Su Mu's reaction, the two of them squinted their eyes slightly. Probably surprised by his reaction. No one in the entire alley is afraid of the two of them. I still remember the first time we met, Su Mu was so scared that he was in a state of panic. The two of them gave Su Mu a deep glance and slowly withdrew their heads, closing the door. Su Mu also turned around and entered the room. In the room, my wife is feeding Xiaolinger, with a smile on her lips and a loving expression on her face. Su Mu placed the dustpan on the table and bent down to look at the little one eating hard, with a smile on his face as well. The body, which was originally wrinkled and flushed, has gradually unfolded, giving it a hint of a baby's whiteness. This was sent by Li Daoyu next door. Try it and I'll go to the kitchen to see if the meat stew is ready. Yi Yingying nodded. Su Mu entered the kitchen. The jar was making a gurgling sound, and the air was filled with a strong aroma of meat. Open the lid, there is thick sauce inside, and pieces of walnut-sized meat are floating and sinking, rolling up and down. Su Mu picked up a piece and blew hot air into his mouth. The meat is fragrant and has been stewed until crispy. Although there are not as many seasonings as in previous lives, the material of the monster meat itself is already excellent. It can easily kill those so-called top-tier cows in seconds. Su Mu turned around and opened the lid of the large pot, which contained half a pot of cooked lingmi. Each grain is crystal clear, with a faint fragrance that fills the heart and lungs. Dig up a small spoon and put it in your mouth. Soft, sticky, fragrant, and sweet. This is called cultivating immortality. Su Mu sighed in his heart. Unlike before, I used to call myself a cultivator every day and eat worse than ordinary people. He filled a large bowl of lingmi, then placed meat chunks and poured soup. Su Mu carried it into the bedroom. I'll hold Xiaolinger, you have some food first. Yi Yingying nodded and handed Xiaolinger, who was gnawing her thumb in her arms, to Su Mu. Xianggong, would it be too wasteful for us to eat like this? Looking at a large bowl of spiritual rice and nearly half a pound of animal meat, Yi Yingying felt a little heartbroken. In the past, when they ate lingmi, they used to use small bowls as big as fists. For monster meat, they often had to mix it with other meats for stewing. If you're not full, supplement with regular food. Didn't I tell you before? I won't let you suffer anymore. You can eat as much of this kind of food as you want. It's okay if you open your stomach and eat it. Su Mu shook little Linger in his arms and smiled. Really? Of course it is. Yi Yingying's happy eyes turned into a crescent moon with a smile. She devoured the food in her bowl until her stomach slightly bloated. Xianggong, I can't eat anymore. Yi Yingying contentedly handed the remaining small half of the bowl to Su Mu. Xiaolinger has already fallen asleep, you should also lie down and rest. Su Mu took the rice bowl, reached out to wipe away the sauce from the corner of Yi Yingying's mouth, left the bedroom, and entered the kitchen. With the remaining small half of Yi Yingying's bowl, Su Mu finished 3 big bowls. My stomach was bloated after eating, and then it stopped. There is still a small portion left in the pot, ready to be kept for dinner. After tidying up the dishes, Su Mu went to the miscellaneous room and took out his sword repair skills. Thunderbolt Swordsmanship. Although reason told him that his current strength should not be much different from the Li brothers, the feeling of being cared for always left him feeling uncertain and wanting to do something. It's best to improve your strength. He has been improving his fire control technique recently and is now a master of fire control technique, 514/3200, which has greatly increased his strength compared to before. But he still feels that it's not enough. Relying solely on the technique of controlling fire is not enough. The fire control technique can only be used for attacks, and there is still a lack of defense. Buying defense tools is not very realistic. The price of magic tools is already expensive, and defense tools are the most expensive among them. Although Su-mu has made some money, he is still far from buying defensive weapons. After much thought, we can only focus on our physical fitness. Just as the lightness technique is limited by physical constitution, it cannot fully exert its speed. While improving physical fitness, it is also equivalent to increasing speed, killing two birds with one stone. So Su-mu finally came up with this book, Thunder Sword Art. In fact, when he bought books, he had the idea of strengthening his body. Open the book and take a page-by-page view. It took me half an hour to get a rough understanding of this swordsmanship from beginning to end. There are 3 types of sword moves in Thunderbolt swordsmanship, namely Thunderbolt, Flash Thunderbolt, and Thunderbolt. There are 12 variations in each formula. In addition to the moves, there are also accompanying breathing techniques used to strengthen physical fitness, coordinate physical strength, and unleash the full power of swordsmanship. Without breathing techniques, swordsmanship is nothing but a flower rack. Without swordsmanship, breathing can only be used to warm up. The combination of the two forms Thunder Sword. After reading it, Su-mu wanted to try practicing, but unfortunately, he searched around the room but couldn't find a sword for practice. When buying a book, I forgot to buy a sword. Su-mu smiled bitterly and self-deprecatingly. Finally, think about it and don't use it anymore. Let's start gesturing with empty hands. I just practicing the secret script a few times, but I always felt that it was not suitable, and the name of swordsmanship was not displayed in the skill bar. By the way, I don't know if this is feasible. Su-mu snapped his fingers and a flame flew out, twisting and changing before his eyes, finally transforming into a dark red long sword covered in flame patterns. This is a newly comprehended ability that has been recently enhanced after using the fire control technique. Similar to compressed fireballs, it is just more stable. It was also designed by Su-mu to overcome the attack speed problem of compressed fireballs. After being condensed into weapons, when shooting towards the enemy, the speed will be much faster. After encountering enemies, it can also detonate. It's just that Su-mu hasn't tried it before, and he doesn't know the specific power. After circling around him with the long sword, Su-mu stopped in front of him and reached out to grab it. When the skin comes into contact with the handle of the sword, there is no burning sensation, but rather a warm sensation, which is quite comfortable. Not bad. Su-mu nodded in satisfaction. If the fire control technique continues to improve, it is likely to completely subdue the temperature of the flame and become like a real weapon. At that time, it will be the true anode-producing yin. However, Su-mu waved his long sword a few times and immediately realized the problem. This sword looks like an ordinary sword, but in fact, its body is very fragile. When swung hard, it shows signs of collapse. If it touches a hard object, it may explode instantly. Indeed, I am too naive. To truly turn emptiness into reality, it may take a foundation period, or even a golden pill period, to achieve it. Legend has it that there is a peerless powerhouse, and a strand of sword energy can survive for 100 years. It is estimated that only then can he use flames as real weapons. But just for practice, looking for hands feels like it's enough. With a sword in his hand, Su-mu began practicing Thunder Sword again. For a moment, the sword wind howled in the room. Although the movements are not standard, they can still be considered as having a certain pattern and style. There is no sword, it feels completely different. After practicing the breathing method with great effort, Su-mu opened the system again to check. Introduction to Thunderbolt Swordsmanship, 1/100. Su-mu was overjoyed, took a deep breath, and immediately began adding points. To avoid accidents, only 10 points were added for the first time. Introduction to Thunderbolt Swordsmanship, 11/100. A small blurry memory appears in the mind. At the same time, a faint sense of hunger came from the abdomen. End of this chapter.